עוזר לכם, צהל שוב מכה בכם. זה יום הדין, זה יום הדין, אללה לא עוזר לכם, צהל שוב מכה בכם. כשעסקנו בתפילה, חציתם את התעלה, כשעליתם שוב בהר, לא חשבתם על מחר. זה יום הדין, זה יום הדין, אללה לא עוזר לכם, צהל שוב מכה בכם. זה יום הדין, זה יום הדין, אללה לא עוזר לכם, צהל שוב מכה בכם. אין מנוס ואין מפלט, אין לכם פשוט ברירה, אין תקווה ואין מקלט, אין כבר דרך חזרה. זה יום הדין, זה יום הדין, אללה לא עוזר לכם, צהל שוב מכה בכם. זה יום הדין, זה יום הדין, אללה לא עוזר לכם, צהל שוב מכה בכם. ברמה ובמדבר, באמצע יום הכיפורים, באתם בתרועת שופר, אך יצאתם בשברים. זה יום הדין, זה יום הדין, אללה לא עוזר לכם, צהל שוב מכה בכם. זה יום הדין, זה יום הדין, אללה לא עוזר לכם, צהל שוב מכה בכם. זה יום הדין, זה יום הדין, אללה לא עוזר לכם, צהל שוב מכה בכם.
Were you surprised to see Syrian tanks so close to your unit?
We know that was a surprise because they surprised us because we were not ready for the fight, but because it was a holiday for us. Otherwise, we wouldn't make a surprise like they did today.
Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страны.
Найкращий пастух баранячий хотар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 639 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And the Russian army is falling apart yet again. Who would have expected that?
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 48 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine, both on Thanksgiving and today. And we've had some pretty interesting stuff happening over the past 48 hours, showing that the Russians didn't really have a lot to be thankful for over the past 48 hours. A lot of them didn't even really survive the last 48 hours, but we'll also be getting to that too. But we have some insane clips, especially from the area around the Dnipro area, or the Dnipro River, and this one is one to really start off the night with properly. There was apparently a little event that happened with a Russian tank in the area, and it turned into a little bit of a thing. But here's the clip. Oh my.
Oh my, is that the Russian tank?
Oh my.
Oh dear.
And he's off? Dude, I guess you could say that was a fiery start to that. Oh my god. So, to explain what happened in the whole clip, this tank had been hit, and what was really interesting is that the tanks were already going pretty high speed. They were going about 30 miles an hour when the lead tank was hit here near Oleski, and this caused the ammunition to detonate under the turret. The driver was still either unconscious or flooring the tank the entire time it was on fire, so the commander and gunner could hardly even try and get out of the turret. But it looks like the commander made it out right there.
That's what you call setting the oven to the broiler setting and letting the turkeys fry.
Man, that's popcorn mode on the microwave. But we can also see him running off at full speed into what appears to be a garden, and then the tank at the rear of the convoy almost looks like it runs over a mine, although it probably didn't, because the first one drove over that exact same area of the road, and it didn't run over a mine, but it's still a very bizarre thing to watch, and also showing that the Russians are descending into chaos at least over the past 48 hours, and it gets better as we move from front to front. There are clips like this in every major area of the Ukrainian front lines today. In the south, near Novoprokopivka, there was a wild clip. There's also one from the area of Avdiivka, and I think there's one even from inside of Russia. I'll have to check on that again in a moment, but keeping ourselves focused on the Dnipro River area, we also got to see that a Russian truck got stricken and caught on fire. What was really exceptional about this, though, was that the Russians took the moment to start unloading the supply truck of the ammo in the back, so that way it wouldn't explode like some kind of a massive bomb on the side of the road. So here's the clip. We can see the KAMAZ on fire. And we can see the tire right there burning, and we can see some smoke coming from the underside. We can also see a Ural 4320 that was plastered. It is in a lot worse shape than the KAMAZ, and another truck even further back that's also broiling in flames as well. We see the Russians trying to unload the ammo as quickly as they can, and also check on it to make sure there's no fires in the crates. But
Did you see that rusty wood they used to make the crate out of? That was literally rotten wood on the top of that lid. Look at that.
Dude.
Those are quality, Russian quality.
Dude, they cut down that tree, and when the axe went into the side of it, it didn't make like a thwack sound. It made a squish noise when they hit it with the axe. That was already rotten before they made that into a box.
And also, I see some folks saying that these are Ukrainians. We're sure that these are not the Russians or Ukrainians, or who are these people?
I'd have a feeling it'd be pretty hard pressed. And let me make sure. Let's see. Russian truck burns after a strike on a column on the left bank of the Dnipro River. Soldiers unload ammunition to save it from the flames. And I would love to thank everyone for saying that these are Ukrainian soldiers. But I don't think so, because we can see Z marks. And usually these convoys are well behind the lines. Let's look at the soldiers again just to make sure. And let's see here. Any markings to show they're Ukrainians? I'm not really seeing any. And also, due to them wearing almost whatever the hell they really want, I would doubt that they're Ukrainians. Because, oh my god, who is this guy, man? This guy looks like he's about to give me a deal at the pawn shop. Goodness.
Dang, man. You going hard on him.
We now see him showing off the rest of the convoys. They run away with some ammo, and that's the end of the clip. But this does not appear to be Ukrainian soldiers looting a convoy that was blown up. This appears to be Russian soldiers trying to salvage some ammo from their own convoy that ended up getting stricken and knocked out on its way into the area around Oleski. But still, regardless of what happened, regardless of who was taking the ammo out of that truck, the damage is quite obvious and very clear that this entire convoy's supplies, multiple tons of it, won't be making its way to the front lines anytime soon, except for that one crate that they took out of the KAMAZ. But moving on from that, we also saw more Ukrainian strikes on Russians in this area. And we can see here that the Russians set up in some kind of almost what appears to be an industrial compound of some kind, maybe even a lumber mill, although there's not a lot of lumber to be had in Ukraine. And we can see that the GMLRS strikes hit directly into this building on this very side of the compound, and a fire is started on the right side of the building. Most likely where something sensitive like fuel was stored, because the smoke is a thick, dark black color, usually indicating that fuel is burning. Oh! Tractor! They're taking the tractor!
Man, they got to try to save that. That's all they've got.
Man, it's all we have. But with that, we're now moving on into our last clip in the area of the Dnipro River, where we also got to see that some Ukrainian forces have brought over some heavier anti-tank firepower than what we've normally seen, as they used a javelin. St. Javelin made an appearance today on some Russian armor in the distance near Krenki. from what we can tell, and this is a very rough estimate because we know it's from the left bank, but we don't know from where, we have a feeling that it's somewhere around Krenki and being fired in the general area of this forest leading up to Krenki. That's, of course, once again, a rough estimate on the geolocation. We don't really know exactly for sure, but it is showing that Ukrainian forces are starting to use AT weapons on the ground against the Russians instead of relying entirely on their artillery to take care of the Russian armor. And there goes the javelin. And we're waiting for the blast. And we don't really see it yet. Oh, there it is. Oh, they got him.
Дымок пішов, сука. Бачиш, піднімається.
Oh, we can hear some artillery going off out there too. Juicy. I like it. But with that, that's the end of the clip while I hear Matthew typing away furiously on the mic.
Can you hear me typing?
I can hear literally every single keystroke that you're making. The audience probably...
my mic fell off yesterday off the back. It got unhinged from the desk. And I'm trying to figure out where it was, and apparently it's too close to the keyboard, so let me try to raise it up.
Dude, I was sitting there watching that clip and you weren't saying anything and all I heard was click, 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 click. I was like, damn, he's going to town over there.
Man, that's how you know Matt is hard at work. You hear that keyboard clicking and the water drinking. You know I'm working.
Yeah, but the thing is that probably a lot of people in watching the stream can't even hear it because the audio for the desktop is reduced by 30%. So they're probably not hearing it, but on my end, I can hear it all the way. But still, with that, moving on into a general overview, kind of putting together the clips that we're seeing right now and getting an analysis of what the battlefield is looking like in this area, we can see that Russian forces in the area of Oleski appear to be starved for ammunition as their supply lines and supply columns are getting stricken and knocked out by Ukrainian forces before they can really make it to the town. This is leading most likely to a reduction in Russian combat abilities of the units garrisoned inside of Oleski due to that decreased amount of supplies. Not only that, but the striking of Russian armor in the area as well is also indicating that Ukrainian forces may have closed in a considerable distance in the areas of the marshes surrounding Oleski and may be directly targeting those tanks with ATGMs, or they may have been able to hit them with artillery or be able to even drop some kind of an airborne mine off through artillery fire. Moving on over into the area of Kazachi Lahri and Krenki, we also got to see that Ukrainian strikes on Russian positions, along with the Ukrainians using javelins to attack Russian armor, is certainly showing that there is a consistent supply line able to carry somewhat heavier infantry equipment across the river to the Ukrainian forces and help them to secure a very strong foothold on this side of the river. Based off of all of this information and also additional information that we didn't include in video evidence because we didn't have any, that Ukrainian forces are beginning to push out of Kazachi Lahri and Krenki and towards Oleski Sands, it does appear that the Ukrainians are continuing to try and expand this foothold, or more so bridgehead, so that way they can begin to bring over even heavier equipment to support the infantry, such as armored personnel carriers or light vehicles. This may eventually also turn into tanks as well, although we're doubting that that will be something that happens soon. Tanks will require a full-on bridge to be made, much like we saw the Russians make earlier on and when they were occupying Kherson last year, and that would take a very large and very considerable bridgehead to conduct and build without that bridge immediately being destroyed by Russian artillery fire. Nevertheless, we are seeing a promising scene happening down in the area of the left bank of the Dnipro River, and hopefully as time goes by, this little scene doesn't deteriorate, but it continues to grow and get even better as time goes on. But moving on out of that, we have some interesting clips from inside of Russia, and starting off with one that really confused me because we didn't really get a lot of backstory to what happened inside of Moscow. A restaurant appears to have caught on fire, and it's not only that, it's weird because the Ukrainian armed forces actually made a comment about the restaurant fire, possibly indicating that there may have been some sort of a Ukrainian involvement in setting this specific restaurant on fire. A ZSU telegram, and the ZSU stands for the Armed Forces of Ukraine, said, in their exact words, I don't have the picture. I found it later, but then didn't include it. It said, "Now eat with smoke." So I don't know if there was some kind of a pro-Russian person who was in this restaurant and something happened that led to this fire. We don't really have a lot of information to go off of, but we can see that a pretty posh restaurant inside of a large mall in Moscow caught on fire and appeared to be burning quite heavily by the time this video was filmed. We can see the fire and its smoke passing over the road, and that's the end of the clip. But a very interesting thing to know that the ZSU made a exact mention of this very fire happening in this very restaurant. We don't really know enough information to even tell y'all why they did that, but it's still bizarre nevertheless. Moving on from that little bit of news and on into our next bit inside of Russia, we also got to see a really interesting dichotomy, you know, to pull out the thesaurus there real quick, of billboard placements inside of Russia. Really just this one in particular. It's in Western Russia somewhere, and here's the two original billboards. We can see on one side, there's some kind of a warning, because we can see, like, the criminal tape at the top of the billboard, you know, for, like, crime scene, stuff like that. And then on the right side, we can see some kind of a BTRD with a gush gun on top. Well, actually, that looks more like one of those modern crappy APCs that the Russians try to make out to be like a killer. And then we can also see what it really just appears to be a military ad for the Russian army. So let's move down here to the actual translation in English of these billboards, and let's look at the one on the left. It says at the top, "Caution scammers." And then it has a little text in the middle that says, "Your card has been blocked, your relative is in trouble, you have won a lottery, click this link."
What?
And then it says, "Don't be fooled." So this is telling people, this is just like a public safety announcement telling people, don't be fooled, don't be scammed by, like, you know, a scammer from, like, India or something like that who's trying to get your credit card information. That's pretty much what this is saying. And then right beside that, after it tells you, don't be scammed and don't be fooled with lies about things, it then says, "Contract service. Contact the Military Commissariat, Micro District 17, Building 13A," and then gives their phone number. "Defend the motherland at the call of the heart."
Oh, the irony. The scammer is right next door to the warning billboard.
Dude, depending on which way you drive into town this day, you get different messages. You get told, don't fall for scammers, and you don't join the army, or you get scammed and you join the Russian army.
Man, if you're going to work, you're going to the left, you get the contract service billboard. If you're going back home after you signed up, you realize, oh, I've been fooled. They warned me.
Dude, it's a sick trick. It's like something the devil would do, you know? It's like, oh, it looks so good, so tempting. And then when you turn around and leave, you can't leave now, you've been scammed. It's like, honestly, the best billboard placement I have ever seen in Russia. Ever. I mean, top of the line crap right there. They ought to do that for every single recruitment billboard inside of Russia. But that's all the news we had from inside of the Russian Federation today. And also, really quickly, because I didn't make a note to any of y'all how we were running this stream tonight, we are going to be covering Middle East news later, because many of y'all highly demanded that we continue covering that. Although YouTube might start to curb some things regarding the channel, we do have it tonight. It's just that due to the ceasefire being implemented today for the hostage release, there is really no news coming out from the ground anymore anywhere inside of Israel. We have some news. It's like 8 or 9 different videos and news sources. But beyond that, there wasn't really a lot. But we will be covering it. It's just that it's going to be an incredibly small segment after the Ukraine war is over. But moving on from that, and well, not when the Ukraine war is over, because this war is still going on, you know, of course, today. But we will be covering it after the news segment's over. But moving on from outside of Russia and back into Ukraine, this is when we move into some very interesting little clips and features, quirks and features more so, from our location unknowns. And moving on to our first one, we got to see what a Russian inspirational speech looks like on the battlefield. So let's take a look at this. And I'll be also reading the translation at the bottom. Have you all taken your weapons? Grenade launchers, machine guns, schmel, grenades. Dude, this guy called him schmelly. He said, did y'all take your schmel?
What is a schmel grenade?
Actually, there's a comma. So schmel, it's like something entirely different than some. Let me type that in. Schmell.
Oh, they're bringing out that biological warfare now. Bring out your schmill. The nasty smell, like the fart spray or something.
Oh, it's an RPO, which is a kind of a thermobaric rocket launcher. Here it is right here.
Ah, that's a nasty smell indeed.
Now, I know what an RPO is. I've never heard it called a schmell, though. But apparently, it makes the Russians very schmelly. But anyways, ammunition, does everyone have everything in place? Nobody left anything? Otherwise, whoa, I can't read that. Oh, I can't even go back to show you that one, Matthew. Get down on one knee. Oh? Colin Kaepernick? Is that you?
Oh dear, that's political.
Oh well, I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying there's a little bit of a similarity there. But oh Lord, great God, send, O Lord, your archangel Michael to help your servants, Myrmidonsity, guide and support us, whatever news we receive during the day. Teach us to accept them with a calm soul and firm conviction. What is your holy will for everything? Holy heavenly powers. Amen. They all get back up. Bratva, I need anger.
Hey, I hear music.
Oh, I have a feeling it's Russian, so I think we might be able to play it. Maybe.
It sound like Sigma male music. That's what got me worried.
What are the charges? Playing a song? A succulent Chinese song? But anyways, I need audacity. I need speed. He's not talking about like moving fast. He's talking about the drug. And we need a victory. This forest belt is already ours. We just have to get to it. Wait a minute. What? Wait a minute. This guy's like, we already own this place. We just have to take it. It's like, that's like saying, we own this car. We just have to buy it. It's like, no, you don't. You don't own the car. You're using doublespeak here.
One of those people that they just believe something so strongly that they hope it happens. The people like that hope something manifests itself. They think hard enough. That's the Russians right now. They're like, if we think hard enough, it'll be ours, blyat.
Yeah, they're like, I think, therefore I am. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian FPV pilot watching this is like, you think, therefore you're gone. But anyways, don't pity yourself. Oh, wow, that's really good. That's honestly, that's the best advice he could give him. But take care. Don't feel pity for anyone. Take care of yourself and your brother. Be attentive. Audacious. Brave and angry.
They're angry, that's for sure.
Oh, I can't read that either. On our return, Banya is waiting for us. And let me get some context real quick.
Oh, that's not bad.
Oh, I'm hoping it's not, because I'm typing that in. So Abanya, oh my heavens. Well, I would show you all the Wikipedia thing, but the first thing I saw was a nice pair of Twin Peaks, so we will not be showing you all that. But apparently it's a kind of sauna. But I'm not going to tell you all any more than that, because it looks like it was not anything good. Warm slippers. Hey, first we go to the brothel, then warm slippers. It's a perfect combination. And talking on the phone with your wives, with moms. Well, who doesn't have wives? Oh my God!
This dude is wildin'. What the hell? What kind of speech is this?
Dude, this man is balling. I'm not even reading that. Everyone got it, guys. That's right. Don't shout. Wait a minute. Dude, he's like, I want you angry. I want you audacious. And he went, yeah. And he's like, don't shout. Don't do that. Who the hell told y'all to do that? You think you're hyped? Moving forward on a combat mission, listen to the battle order. To march. In the direction of the,
What the? This dude is crazy.
I gotta
what kind of, is this supposed to motivate people or get them concerned about their sanity?
I gotta tell you, man, this guy is giving me some very strong Mike Tyson vibes when he was with that female reporter where he's like, listen, I don't talk to women reporters, and he was doing that. Like, this guy is giving me some very strong, very bad vibes. We're not reading that line off.
и вернуться назад.
and get back.
Задача простая
The task is simple
и выполнимая.
and achievable.
Все услышали?
Did everyone hear?
Ну,
That's
если все
right.
услышали,
Well,
тогда
if everyone has heard, then the department commander should prepare the personnel for loading.
состав погрузки. Вперед.
All right, well, what a speech. So y'all gotta look right there into what a normal pep rally speech looks like on the front lines. It's kind of lame, makes no sense, and it's a really bizarre one. It's just it is what it is, I suppose. But we're moving on from that and into the next one, where we also got to see that the 43rd Brigade has been training for the first time in the first snowfall of this year. Winter has finally arrived for most of the country in Ukraine, and once again, the cold weather conditions are most likely going to be bringing a slow to most combat activities outside of armored vehicles. Ukrainian winters do get cold enough that one can start to experience cold weather injuries, such as minor frostbite, when subjected to the elements for too long or clothed too poorly. We'll probably start to see that a lot of offensive actions that are conducted during the winter are mostly armored based, which actually would usually contribute itself to Russian activities, but considering that they have already been undergoing failed offensives during the autumn, they will most likely have lost the initiative to conduct further offensives, and the ball will be in the Ukrainians' court to initiate their own offensives during the winter months. We can also see right here that some soldiers do have winter coverings for their camouflage. Others look like they haven't been issued the winter coverings yet, but they're most likely going to be issued them a little bit later. And then finally, in this last picture, we can once again see the BMP and the infantry squad moving as a unit to try and simulate frontline conditions and to learn how to fight even more effectively, especially across the open ground and forests that we're seeing here in this training film, possibly suggesting that they're not going to battlefields like Bakhmut or Avdiivka. They may be going somewhere into the northern front, such as Kupiansk, or maybe even down towards the open fields of Zaporizhia. But moving on from that clip and into our next one, we can also see a little game. Y'all know Where's Waldo and Elf on the Shelf, which really has nothing to do with this, but find the sniper. Well, it's really hard to find the sniper when we don't have the picture, but here's the picture. Find the sniper.
I think I see him. Is he over there on the left?
Right here?
Yes.
I don't know. Is he?
If that's him, that was a bad cover, but I have a feeling I'm missing him.
You are missing him.
Oh? Let me guess he's standing right in front of the picture or something.
Find the sniper, Matthew. I can't tell you. I can't tell you. Find him.
Let's see. It's like in 240p, but let's see.
It adds to the camouflage. Russians view the world in 240p.
Man, I'm at a loss. Like, where is he at?
He's right there. You see his scope? Right where the mouse cursor is? That right there, that little circle, is a scope. His head is right there, and that's his rifle.
That is highly effective camouflage. That dude's hidden like a snake.
That guy could have people walk over him, and they wouldn't even know he was there.
But then he would bite like a snake, so he could qualify.
Oh, eat like snake. but and also some people are saying zoom in. I wish I could, but this is the biggest we can get the picture. For some reason, we're not allowed to zoom it in any further for Reddit reasons. I don't really know what the actual point is, but still, the sniper is right there. And I'm circling my mouse cursor if y'all are watching the screen, right over his rifle, and he's behind it, although you can hardly even see him. But a very well-hidden sniper, amazing camouflage. And we have seen that the Ukrainian sniper schools are starting to put a lot of effort into concealment, which is starting to show that Ukrainian sniper strategies are beginning to change. Instead of long-distance shots, like the world record shot we just saw conducted about 2 weeks ago, it looks like a lot of their snipers, due to their heavy amount of concealment, are starting to be used a lot more at shorter distances on the front lines, directly against Russian infantry units in the field. This is very interesting, and it's also suggesting that there may be a very large push in the Ukrainian army to try and increase the amount of snipers that are available, so that way they will be able to integrate them into normal frontline activities instead of using them as special infiltration groups trying to take out commanders or other higher-ups within the system. But moving on from that and into today's location unknowns, we can also see a little montage of some night attacks that were conducted within Ukraine. Here's the clip. Very interesting intro. I gotta say, the music is a very interesting pick. But we can see here the Ukrainians firing some artillery shells, it seems, into a Russian position. We can see them dropping another one. Oh, right on top of a Russian. We can now see another one being dropped right on top of a Russian squad in the middle of that trench. Oh. Well. That's well. Gee. That's something. And I don't know what they're doing. I mean, like, are they are they legitimately napping like this just in the open field? I don't know what they're doing, but the Ukrainians don't know either. They're just going to play it safe. Oh.
Roasted orc.
I don't think Icy Hot's going to fix that.
Icy hot patch.
Jack loves icy.
It's icy
hot
cool,
patch.
then hot. That sounds like Orange Man versus the other guy.
Jack loves icy hot. He loves it. But anyways, we can see them hitting a small ammo cache within a Russian trench. The ammo exploding. Oh, that ammo's getting a little spicy down there. Call it Tabasco. Matthew can tell y'all, I love Tabasco. Like, I discovered...
He's got the gallon bottle of it, so he's obsessed.
Yeah, I discovered that, like, I think 2 months ago. I have been hooked on Tabasco ever since. It is so good. Like, it's not good on its own, I will admit. But added to something, oh my lord, it's next level. But... that's the end of that clip, and we can see that the Russians got a little bit of that spice, like Tabasco, themselves. But moving on from that, we're now moving on into our next little clip, where we got to see that the Ukrainians are starting to pull out some older training devices and systems to try and get some soldiers some experience within a tank-like environment. The Ukrainians have a issue with being able to train enough crew members to man a lot of the equipment that they have. And this is a large part of the problem as to why support always seems to be trickling into Ukraine slowly. There is just an overall lack of Ukrainian tankers and crew members to be able to man and operate a lot of the systems that countries like the United States are providing to them. And that's why you'll see that sometimes a lot of the equipment that is supposed to be in Ukraine has ended up inside of supply yards in Poland, and they're just sitting there until they can be sent over. The Ukrainians have been trying to fix this by increasing the rate of the amount of crews and personnel that they can train, and in an effort to try and increase the amount of tankers that can be trained at a single time, they brought out these ancient T-55 trainers to try and get guys experience on what it would be like inside of a tank. What these simulate is the crew compartment of the T-55 only, and they move them along these railroad tracks forward, a very primitive system, and they have explosions go on around it, and they also try and tell the driver to stop, and they also try and have the commander, gunners, and loaders operate with each other, although, from what we know, the loader role would most likely be a non-existent role in this training, unless if they're being trained on something like a Western main battle tank like a Leopard 1. Then there may be a trainer in there, but it's most likely just a crew of 3 being trained on a T-72, a T-64, or a T-80. We can see here some of the simulated smoke and explosions happening around these little tank simulators, so that way the crew inside can get as good an understanding as possible on how this really will work in practice. Of course, simulations like this don't really get that close to the real thing, but it's better than nothing. And then in the last picture, we can see a Ukrainian loader right here, outside of a turret, actually getting an understanding of how to try and load a tank's main gun. But with that, that's the end of those little clips. Very interesting to see that the Ukrainians are pulling out older simulators like that. And something to always note is that even though things are incredibly old, especially for Ukraine, it's vital that they bring them back out into service because every little bit counts. Moving on from that, we also got a British Ministry of Defense report on the ongoing situation on the ground. And according to them, Russian forces in Ukraine have continued to suffer mass casualties from Ukrainian long-range precision strikes well behind the front line. I love how the defense intelligence is always like watching the clips we're all watching, like when we watch the guys in the auditorium get hit by a HIMARS, and then they put out a report like this where they're like, they are apparently getting hit pretty heavily behind the lines. It's like, you don't say. But on the 10th of November, 2023, likely over 70 Russian troops were killed in a strike on a convoy of trucks 23 kilometers behind the front line in the village of Vladivka in the Kherson Oblast, once again a part of the Ukrainians expanding across the left bank. Subsequently, on the 19th, a strike on Russian troops attending an awards ceremony or concert in Kumachove. And look, they did watch the clip, y'all. They really did. 60 kilometers inside of Russian-controlled territory likely caused tens of casualties. Ukraine has also suffered similar incidents. A Russian ballistic missile killed 19 members of Ukraine's 128th Separate Mountain Assault Brigade at a medal ceremony on the 3rd of November. Deployed soldiers are typically well aware of the ranges of their adversaries' weapon systems. However, faced with the reality of very long-range combat deployments, commanders face an acute dilemma. They must balance the best practice of keeping the troops dispersed and less vulnerable to strikes, and the day-to-day requirement to gather units together to conduct administration and to maintain morale, adding a lot to your average commander's plate, which can become overwhelming and lead to mismanagement. But moving on from that into our next bit of news, we can also see that a Russian SPG exploded. Now, really quickly, this is something that I have to say, the caption on this description is very, very skewed in a bad way. It says, this is the caption to the pictures, Russian soldier lost his leg after using a Chinese artillery shell, probably supplied from Iran. The round detonated inside of the gun. The title is completely wrong because there is no proof at all that it was a Chinese artillery shell supplied by Iran. There has been equal credit put to the fact that the Russians don't really exchange their barrels on their artillery pieces often, and so this may have been a worn out barrel that just blew up because it had been overused and had been heavily weakened due to sustained fire. So we don't really
I like how they're naturally trying to blame it on the Chinese for that bad manufacturing. They're like, it was that old crappy Chinese artillery shell that blew up on him and made him lose his leg.
What are the charges? Shooting around a second Chinese round? Get your...
They tried to tie everybody into this too. They said the Russian soldier used it, the dummy. They got the cheap Chinese artillery shell, and goofy Iran, they supplied it to them on top of it. They literally tied all the bad people in.
Yeah, dude, whoever wrote this caption, I mean, no bad credit to them because it's about as good a theory as any other. But they tried to tie in every single bad actor out there that they could. I mean, I bet you they'll say that the primer was also made for the shell in North Korea at some point. But looking at the pictures, it does appear that the damage was very extensive. In fact, the barrel was completely blown away on this thing. We don't even know where the barrel is, but we can tell that this artillery piece has been put out of action. And one part of the caption is true. The Russian soldier did lose his leg. The explosion of the gun's barrel apparently led to an overpressure in the breech, which led to it exploding onto the gunner, from what we were told. And it led to him having his leg amputated, at least from the story that came out. But nevertheless, the damage was very significant to this SPG, and we'll probably assume that it is either out of action or it will be repaired and back in action in several weeks or months' time. But moving on from that little bit of location unknown news, and, beyond the Russians hurting themselves, which they seem to do a lot of, we also got the casualty report for the past 24 hours, and it was something. The losses have once again climbed up into massive margins.
Man, 1,100 troops again. Only one Bobcat, though. The Bobcat numbers are all over the place. Like, they're high some days, they're extremely low the others, but man, the other losses are staying high.
Oh, the other losses are truly insane. 1,100 troops lost in 24 hours again. It seems almost as though the Russians are almost unable at this point in the war to get below 1,000 casualties per day, according to Ukrainian MOD reports. Usually, and I have to say this, we have no reason to doubt Ukrainian Ministry of Defense casualty reports because they've usually been fairly reasonable. And while 600 soldiers a day on average, back months ago, sounded like a high number, when you consider that there's nearly 300,000 Russian soldiers currently inside of occupied Ukraine, it actually ends up being a fairly reasonable number for that kind of troop density in a single area, especially in a war like this. So that means that 1,100 troops being lost is probably a fairly accurate number without a large deviation for accuracy. I would assume that it's maybe 100 more or 100 less at best. from this number that's being given right here, but this is probably a very good one to work with. We can also see that 32 armored personnel carriers have been lost over the past 24 hours, which means that about an entire battalion tactical group's worth of armored personnel carriers was once again completely obliterated across the entire front line. We also saw that 32 supply trucks were also destroyed, which is a very high number. We really don't know what kind of supply trucks are being used at this point. We know that there's a heavy mix of Ladas that are now being counted as supply trucks because they are being used for supply, but 32 vehicles used for supply have been destroyed. We also saw that 30 main battle tanks have been destroyed over the past 24 hours. This is an incredibly high number because while only one battalion tactical group worth of armored personnel carriers have been wiped out over 24 hours, 3 entire battalion tactical groups of main battle tanks were destroyed over the last 24 hours. A significantly high number. And also showing that the Russians, while we have heard that they're not really doing that much in the Avdiivka area anymore outside of the Avdiivka industrial area or the coke plant, these losses may be from those actions alone, or the actions that they're taking in Kupiansk and also near Novoprokopivka as well. We also saw that Ukrainian counter battery was wildly successful again over the past 24 hours, as they were able to destroy another 31 artillery pieces, getting the losses up to 7,833. They also destroyed only one drone, 2 MLRSs, and a whopping 4 anti-aircraft systems, which is a very high number on average, considering that they've only destroyed 595 of them over the whole war. These numbers are indicative that the Russian army, like we said in the title tonight, is truly falling apart, or at least falling into chaos. We don't really know if the first snowfall is to contribute to this chaos, or whether it's just abysmal losses being taken and failed offensives occurring along the front lines right now. But regardless, the losses are very high and very telling that the Russian army is having a tough time of it right now. But moving on from the casualty report and on into the actual frontline news outside the left bank of the Dnipro River, we've seen a decent amount of activity over a wide spread, especially in the area of Kupiansk in video form, which is very odd. There's usually some kind of an ongoing activity by the Russians trying to push towards Kupiansk as a normal thing, but we don't really get a lot of video and picture evidence to show for it most of the time, and so we usually just gloss over this area of the front lines without really speaking about it much. But tonight we will be able to, and before we do that, many of y'all have been given some interesting topics of discussion in the live chat, and I've seen that the live chat's actually been moving at a pretty decent rate tonight. Of course, we encourage all of y'all to get in that live chat and to make sure to have a fun time of it. Get to know folks, get to be friends. And a lot of y'all are friends with each other. And if you are a mute right now and you have not been in the live chat, I highly encourage you to do it. There's a lot of cool people there. But of course, we always just want everyone to be really respectful and nice to each other when you're in the live chat, because, you know, we want to make sure the folks are decent. We try and be nice to everyone here, unless if you're a bot, you know, then we'll probably, you know, give you some choice words. But beyond that, make sure to have fun in the live chat, because we love to hear from you.
We want order in the live chat.
We do, and we also want to hear from all of y'all, because a lot of y'all have very interesting knowledge. Like Rob Eisman, Walter E. Lakota, and J.C. Atkins are really our naval folks here in the live chat, and I know that we can always go to them to give us good explanations and answers about anything occurring in the naval sphere. Folks like Mark give really good input on strategy, as well as a whole bunch of other folks as well, and a lot of y'all have interesting things to add on to when y'all are talking in the live chat. So don't miss out, because we would love to hear what y'all have to say about things. Maybe we'll even be able to add that into what we're talking about right now. But many of y'all have given y'all's opinions on some of the leading topics of the day. And Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first poll segment of the night, we have our first one, which says both Germany and the U.S. says Zelensky should realize that the war cannot continue, quote unquote, like this. And what are your thoughts? 42% said, what is the proposed solution by the U.S. and Germany? 25% said the U.S. and Germany are correct on it. 27% said the U.S. and Germany are being unrealistic. And 7% said unsure. And on this one, I'm really not sure what the U.S. and Germany are proposing, because Ukraine is fighting the best they can at the moment. There's really not much else they can do. And right now, it just seems like they're making statements with really nothing to offer in return for basically criticizing Ukraine's fighting abilities. So I would be with the 42%. I would like to know what is the proposed solution. And then if they have a good one, maybe Ukraine can consider it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I heard about that today, and I'm not really understanding where the issue is coming in with their comments. A lot of Ukrainian forces at this point have been trained by the Germans, the British, as well as the United States as well, especially in more higher end combat roles such as anti-aircraft operations, things like that. A lot of them were trained very heavily by the United States. It doesn't really make a lot of sense, especially with the vehement support that the US and many European countries have given, including Germany, to start criticizing Ukraine's combat abilities. Ukraine's combat abilities, considering the facts, have been exceedingly well, even from the first day of the war. Many, quote-unquote military experts thought that Ukraine would collapse, like you all know at this point, like Milley said before the war even began, in 3 to 7 days. And now we're nearly 2 years down the road, and all of them were proven wrong. That in itself is a testament to me that the Ukrainian armed forces have done an amazing job and have incredible fighting abilities, especially considering, and this is being quite honest, the Russians going into this war were better equipped than the Ukrainians, had larger numbers, and large abilities to rain down fire on Ukrainian forces wherever they were. That was the situation at the very start of the war. And yet, even with all of the chips stacked against them, the Ukrainians have been able not only to stop them from pushing into the country, but have been able to push them out of the Kyiv Oblast. They've been able to push them out of the entire northern area of the country. Not only that, they've been able to liberate major cities like Kherson and push them all the way back across the Seversky Donets River in the Kharkiv Oblast. All of these things, to me, don't show an army that's having a tough time with actual combat. It shows that it is an army that is under-equipped compared to their adversary. It's smaller in number, and yet they have been able to pull off the impossible. Nobody expected this. Not even I expected this before the war kicked off. But on that 4th day of the war, they truly showed that they were a force to be reckoned with, even being way worse off in the numbers and the equipment category than the Russians were. And to me, I think that shows that what the United States and Germany are saying right now is very unrealistic. It's almost coming from a concept that Ukraine is supposed to be some kind of a first world country like the US, when they weren't. And they've certainly made massive leaps and bounds, even just over the past 2 years, in their fighting abilities, in my opinion. So I don't really know where they're coming from, and I'd like to hear their reasoning for making those statements today, because they made absolutely no sense to me, especially considering how far the Ukrainians have come and how well they've done given the circumstances. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next poll says, do you think the quote-unquote Russian battle speech is good to get the soldiers fighting hard? 54% said no, it's borderline deranged. 29% said, for the Russians it works. 10% said yes, it's very inspirational, and 7% said unsure. And no offense to anyone who said it's very inspirational, but I do have concerns. But anyways, the Russian battle speech to me seemed like it was a little bit wild. I guess maybe for the Russians, maybe it was good. But I think to anyone else, it would be considered pretty much deranged. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say it's a little bizarre, and also just really quickly talking, because many of y'all know the kind of propaganda take that the Russians have in the world. They're always the ones standing up for those, traditional values. Where in the world does, and I have no better word for this, so, forgive my language, and if, you have your kids watching, I'm going to give you a moment to, cover their ears or, mute the video or something, so hopefully this is enough time to do that. Where in the world does going to a whorehouse fit into traditional values? I'm not really catching the drift there, because, it's kind of the complete opposite of what they push on the propaganda side of things, and then they just revel in that stuff. I'm not telling y'all whether I agree or disagree with what that guy was saying. I'd say it's very wild to say, but it's completely opposite of what the Russians are always trying to push themselves as in the world. It really makes no sense. So I have to say the speech was wild. It wouldn't motivate me. I would just be confused as hell by the end of it, especially considering that the propaganda says one thing and then this guy is saying the complete opposite. So, that would be my opinion on that. It just doesn't make any sense at all, and it wasn't an inspiring speech to me. So I don't think it was to the Russians. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and that was our last poll, and I see a lot of people were shocked that the enforcer said that word. Oh my goodness. But anyways, moving on to our first super chat of this segment, we have a $133 donation, absolutely massive, from Mark,
Dang.
the recidivistic astronomer. And thank you very much, Mark, as always, for that very generous support. We do really appreciate it very much. And he says, you might not like Millie, as I do not, but he's been accurate after his initial assessment.
And I thank you so much for the support, Mark, and the massive amount of support, by the way. And I got to thank you so much for helping us to keep the channel running. But I would say some of his statements after the fact have been wrong, in my opinion. Like his statement on the Ukrainians taking, I think it was like 8 months in, he said the Ukrainians had already lost 100,000 dead. Which there wasn't really that much proof for. And he, sometimes he was off the mark. One thing I do have to say, though, is that he did start to become a large supporter of U.S. aid, military aid to Ukraine, which I have to say is a good thing, because Milley, isn't, just like an irredeemable person or anything, in my opinion. He has done things that are good and things that are bad. But one thing I always just really hold high up there, and this is one of the most important factors in how I view Milley, is his assessment of how Ukraine would manage at the beginning of the war. And this is being compared to other people like Norman Schwarzkopf, who were almost godlike in their ability to be able to predict geopolitical situations and how they would turn out. You see, and this is my comparison because, by the way, just in case if y'all haven't been around for a while, I am a huge admirer of General Schwarzkopf. He was an amazing general, an amazing strategist. I truly think he's one of the greatest generals of our time, especially with how he was able to conduct forces in the field. But before the Gulf War even happened in 1991, General Milley had been placed in charge of U.S. CENTCOM in that area of the world, and he started to conduct war games, and his war game, Matthew, which was conducted in the late 80s, was a hypothetical scenario where the Iraqis invaded Kuwait and refused to release the Kuwaitis back into their own national sovereignty. And he pretty much mapped out the entire Gulf War and how it would unfold before it even happened. Years before it would happen.
He sounds pretty wise, I guess you could say.
He was incredibly wise, not just as a strategist, but as a person who could foresee geopolitical situations unfolding in the future. He was truly amazing with that ability. And so when the Gulf War happened, or more so when the Iraqis annexed Kuwait, he actually got called up on the phone, and they told him, oh, it's happened. Exactly what you said was going to happen has happened nearly 4 years later. And so when U.S. forces started to get deployed into Saudi Arabia, they just pretty much used exactly what his war game said the strategy should be and implemented it. And it was amazingly well performed. It did way better than everyone expected. And so I would have to say, based off of, like an example like Milley, who knew how things would unfold and had a good idea on and a lot of confidence in what he was saying, and it turned out that he was completely right, Milley didn't have so much of a good track record with the war in Ukraine, especially at the beginning. It didn't really seem like he had a lot of idea of how the Ukrainians may resist. It seems like the assessment of the Ukrainian national government's cohesion and the military's commitment to following the orders of the national government had come very short before the war, and it seems like they were basing their analysis of how the early war would go off of what happened during the fall of Afghanistan, which was almost a completely different situation on how their government existed and how strong it was, and also how the Afghani forces conducted themselves, which were very poorly. So I would have to say I have to give him credit for being a huge supporter of Ukraine and sending U.S. military support there. But in my opinion, he has fallen short just a few times in the past, to the point where it's kind of like a mixed bag on his statements. They may be hits, they may be misses. But that's just my opinion on him. But still, I got to thank you so much for the massive amount of support, Mark, and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope that we can either agree or agree to disagree on this, because I have a very high standard for modern generals, and Schwarzkopf is really the gold standard to me as to what a general should be when it comes to things like that and being able to predict how battles will go. Of course, he did it amazingly well, honestly, too well. But still, I think that's the best standard to work off of, and everyone else falls below that for the most part. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you so much once again for the mass amount of support, Mark. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and we have another super chat from Mark, the recidivistic astronomer. And I've got that word down pat now, Mark. He put in a 125 this time, and huge shout out to you, Mark, for the second very generous support of the night. And he says, "Si vis pacem parabellum." That's Latin, I think.
Yeah, it's Latin.
He says, "It seems the world is moving into a state of instability and warfare, and the U.S. remains powerful. And should it shape this or relinquish control to Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, etc.?"
And I thank you once again for the massive amount of support, Mark. And I know the next super chat we're getting is also from Mark, and it's and it's actually saying something about me thanking him for the support. But we have to thank folks like you, Mark, especially tonight. You've thrown in massive support, and this support, I cannot even lie, is the only thing that keeps the channel running. So I will fail every single time if someone says don't thank someone for the support, because I have to. Because y'all are really the thing that keeps the channel running. And while we always plug the fundraisers and even tell people not to support the channel and to support the fundraisers instead, it is still so important and so vital to the future of this channel that folks in the Lee Spring Army do go out of their way, like you do, to support the channel. And so I thank you so much for that. But I would agree, the world is certainly going into an unstable time at this point. I would have to be honest, I don't really know why. Because usually when the world went to instability before, like the First World War, there were massive global alliances that had, mostly multinational European alliances that had formed that created the perfect storm for the First World War. And in the Second World War, it was largely the economic tumult of the 30s that brought forward the horrors of the 40s. So I don't really know what's causing it this time, because there's some economic tumult, I will admit, but there's no major economic tumult to really drive what we're seeing right now. And there's not any governmental shifts that are happening that are extreme anywhere.
We can't get political, but I think around the world, not just the U.S., I want to make that clear off the bat, when we have weak leaders in certain places, that creates instability in itself, because when people get too predictable, that's when the bad actors start acting up. They start deciding they're going to start invading countries they've been wanting to invade for a long time, and I think that's what we're seeing.
Well, I can't make a comment anyway on that, but one thing I will say is that the U.S. does remain powerful even during the situation, although I don't really understand why things are happening like this. They just are, really. There's no real explanation to it. I would say that the United States does need to ensure that the Western world remains in charge for the most part through its economic power. And there is no such thing as winning against the Russians or the Chinese in terms of military strength. You never win these kinds of ideological wars or wars of control through force of arms. Force of arms is really the last resort when you have failed completely at really trying to make control. The best way to keep control of the situation is to make sure that the Western world retains the majority power over economics. Economics is really the way that folks are actually able to keep control. And that's why the United States has done so well throughout the entire 20th century. The United States was the wealthiest country in the world by GDP, and we still are. And of course, including Europe and all of our other allies around the world, like Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, South Korea. The Western world is by far the largest one economically, and will be able to keep control that way. We need to make sure, instead of passively letting that economic power exist, we need to mobilize it again like we did in the 70s and the 80s to combat these people outright, to challenge their ideas on an open forum and defeat them with actual logical arguments, to spread that idea around the world and even let it seep into places like China and Russia just through mere exposure to it over time. I think that's something that's really important that we need to do, and I think that the United States needs to be the one to spearhead that, and hopefully all of the allies of the United States around the world will follow in suit.
We need to go back to talking softly and carrying a big stick, because it seems like right now we're talking loudly but carrying a very weak stick at the moment. Just the world in general, and that's not a political statement aimed at any one particular country. It's just in general, people have gotten too complacent, thinking that we've got the world order under control, that things can't go out of control again, but they easily can. As we're seeing in Ukraine, as we're seeing in the Middle East, things can easily devolve back into chaos. And the way we've had it for a decade or two now, it can easily get out of whack again in a very global way very quickly.
But I do have to say, because if you're going to try and move down that route, I have to give an equal critique. One side wants to passively sit by and just watch things happen and then react to it, which is a bad idea. But the other side also wants to completely step out of everything and just leave everyone to do whatever the hell they want and let everything fall into chaos. In my opinion, neither of those are a good path forward. That's just me. I think the best path forward at the moment would be for the United States to take an assertive and proactive role in the world, like we did back during the Cold War, and to actively either try and isolate these bad parties or bad eggs, or to try and contain them entirely. I think that would be the best way to go forward. But you don't really see that as being a prevalent idea. I think it certainly should become one, though, because I think that's the best way to deal with it. It did win over communism during the Cold War, and it can certainly win over the soft communism and the weird kind of imperialism that the Russians are exhibiting nowadays. So with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you once again for the massive support, Mark, and I hope that does address that question. And with that, if y'all like what I'm saying, vote for me for president in 2040. But with that, we are on to the last one of this segment, and then we're going to be moving back into the news in Ukraine.
All right, and the last one of the segment also goes to Mark, the recidivistic astronomer who puts in a $150 donation. And huge shout out to you once again, Mark. That is very, very generous support tonight. And once again, it is very much appreciated. He says, I challenge you not to thank me for this donation. Can you do it?
Challenge failed immediately. I gotta thank you. I have to thank everyone for the support, Mark. And I know it gets repetitive, and I know it sounds like a broken record, because I've run out of different ways to say it. And there's not really many ways to say it, but we always want folks to know, even if it does sound like a broken record, that their support is appreciated to this channel. It's the only way we exist. It's the only way we can continue to do this as a job. We have to, always pay bills in the background. We're like really everyone else. And the only way that we can keep this thing running and keep covering the news and keep doing something that I have a huge passion for is through y'all's support. And so I always want to go out of my way, whether it's a $500 super chat or a $1 super chat, to thank every single one of y'all for y'all's support, because if it wasn't for y'all, this channel would be nothing. It would be nothing because there wouldn't be any viewers. It would be nothing because there would be no LSA. It would be nothing because there's no likes. It would be nothing because we wouldn't be able to, do this as a job and, actually make a living off of this, to be able to do this every single night. And so I got to thank you. I have to fail that challenge entirely, Mark, and I have to thank you so much for the support, because if it wasn't for folks like you who stepped up and decided to support this channel, we wouldn't be here right now. And so with that,
big facts.
Thank you.
And also, real quick, Enforcer, he did actually ask in the live chat for us to grab a live chat question in honor of that last one we just read off, so we shall oblige. And the live chat question is going to go to White Lightning 777, who says, where are the F-16s and why the delay?
The F-16s are still in training. We have seen some pictures of Ukrainian pilots sitting inside of F-16s, and we've gotten some questionable reports that they are flying the F-16s and conducting some kind of training, at least in the air. We don't know a lot about it because people are really being hushed about what's really happening with the F-16 training program. But from what we know, they still are on track to be delivered to Ukraine by the beginning of this next year in 2024. So that's why we haven't seen them delivered yet. It's been delayed deliberately, and we've known this for a while, since up until January or so. So we should be seeing them in January. But beyond that, there is really no information or details that a lot of national governments are putting out about the training program for the F-16. I have a feeling that that's probably really deliberate, because they don't really want the Russians to easily be able to find the information. They want them to have to try and look for it or find out themselves. So that way, if the F-16s arrive early, like let's say mid-December this year, it will be a shock to them, especially a shock to their forces in the field. And so with that, I hope that does address that live chat well. And thank you once again for sponsoring that live chat, Mark. And with that, we are now moving on into probably one of the most unmentioned places on our news ever, the Kupiansk area. We usually go over this area and just say nothing's happening here, and usually that's a little untrue. At least in video evidence, nothing's happening in this area, but there's always been, since the Ukrainian counteroffensive all the way in the summer and fall of last year, where the Ukrainians took this area, there has always been a minor bit of activity by the Russians to try and push back towards Kupiansk. And we have seen that over the past 48 hours, the Ukrainians have been able to take a small amount of land. It's like about a quarter of a field. But beyond that, not a lot of frontline movements have happened. But that doesn't mean that the Russians aren't trying. In this first clip, we got to see that the Ukrainians in the 14th Brigade struck several Russian vehicles that were operating in this very northern part of the frontier of Ukraine. And we can see here a KAMAZ that was been pulled over to the side of the road, and they immediately hit it with a 120mm mortar. And it appears that this truck was carrying ammo, because that little weird whitish orangish colored smoke is coming from ammunition that's burning. And we now see that that ammo has created a roaring fire that will burn down that KAMAZ, and we now see a BMP-3 also getting hit, and immediately having an ammo detonation, or an ammo cook-off. We now see it completely explode just a little bit later, destroying the BMP completely. We can now see what appears to be some kind of a... it says an enemy tank, but we can't really tell what kind it is. It kind of looks like a T-80 BVM. Can't really tell. But we can see it looks
snowy.
And it's been destroyed. It appears that it was destroyed by a hit to the engine bay. By the way, really quickly to mention this, because, you know, usually people would be like, well, what? The engine bay isn't the tank. I mean, you know, they could just recover it from the field. This thing is technically considered destroyed because for Russian tanks to operate, their engine must be on. That's different than Western tanks. Most Western tanks can actually operate their hydraulic systems with the engine turned off, which is actually a really good thing because, you know, it can save on fuel. It can also make the tank quieter. It can also hide its thermal signature if it's been sitting in place for a good while. But Russian tanks can't do that. None of the designs can. Every single one of them must have the engine turned on so that we can provide pressure to the hydraulic systems which operate the tank. So if the engine is knocked out, the tank has been knocked out immediately, completely. And we can see that that's what's happened right there. And with that, that's the end clip. I gotta say, out of all of the huge intros and outros that many brigades have, for some reason, the 14th Brigades now sticks out to me as a really nice, classy, minimalist design for an outro. Well, all right. Well, but moving on from that.
Sorry, I'm typing up a poll right now.
Oh,
so.
it's fine. I was like, I don't know. But anyways, moving on from that to our next clip in the area, we can also see that the ground, and this is a good sign. I know this doesn't look like a good sign in the video because this guy is just going ham and not getting anywhere, but this is a really good sign. Winter has arrived and the Rasputitsa is over in this area. It has frozen the ground so solid. This guy is hitting the mud with a sharp axe, and he's hardly getting anywhere. Now, this doesn't seem good for this soldier because he's never going to be able to dig this extension to the trench, but this is great for the Ukrainian army overall. If the ground is this solid, armor can operate anywhere without an issue, and this means that if the Ukrainians wanted to start conducting armored operations in this area of the line, they now can conduct that relatively easy, and also spread out their armored forces instead of having them all regulated to a paved road. Moving on from that, we can also see that while that's true in the Kupiansk area, just a little bit further south, the ground still hasn't solidified yet. It's an ongoing process. We're literally right now, today, in between the ground being a mud slush and the next few days where it's going to become a solidified, hard-packed permafrost nearly. And we can see here that this 2S3 is covered in mud, and this one's drowning in it. And when you see these
Whenever
guys...
I hear you say permafrost or something, it reminds me of that Gold Rush show. That guy yelling, "No guts, no glory."
Man, I always think about how they win every single episode. they have to hurry before the permafrost arrives. You know, and they were always, hurry, we gotta dig up the gold! And then they get like 3 nuggets.
Hurry up, Todd, turn on the sluice box.
Man, it's a piece of piss, or whatever the hell that guy would say, but we can see the folks are just covered in mud. Everything's covered in mud. And you know they wish they were just about 20 miles north where the ground had solidified from the cold.
And also, by the way, if you can't see the poll question, that's because YouTube still hasn't fixed it. The question says, the Pentagon is moving toward letting AI weapons autonomously decide to kill humans. And what are your thoughts?
You know, I'd love to see some real discussion on that in the live chat, not just people voting, because that one has a lot of moral implications behind it that I know a lot of y'all have many different opinions about. But we can now see this 2S3 trying to pull the other one out of the mud slush, or the mud pool, but the mud is just so bad, the Akitsia can't even get any kind of traction in the stuff. It's stuck.
It's thick.
Man. You know, the folks up there in Gatlinburg, Tennessee that make that fudge, they're sitting there like, man, if only we can make our fudge this consistency. Their fudge
the mud
is like,
fudge.
Yeah, the mud fudge. Their mud fudge is so dry up there, it like will break your teeth. Like, it's terrible mud fudge. But anyways, of course, we are still in the transition in between Rasputitsa and solidified hardened ground. Hopefully that area will solidify. Yeah, actually, you know what? For them, that's probably not good, because that means that Akitsia is going to be stuck there until the next Rasputitsa. But moving on from that, we also got to see a Russian tank also having problems with the mud, and this ended up being to its demise. This Russian pontoon bridge laying truck got stuck in the exact same kind of mud that Akitsia got stuck in on the other side of the front line. And the Ukrainians saw this and took advantage of it immediately, sending out an FPV drone to destroy this Russian truck before they could recover it. And here comes the drone again, hitting right into the driver's cab and setting a fire in the fuel tank. Dude, I like how...
Smoking out of the ears.
Dude, I like how it went from, you know, looking pretty good. I mean, it wasn't that bad off of a truck, you know, right there, to that. Like, within, like, 30 minutes. By the way, y'all, aluminum, which is what this truck is made out of, can melt just from the heat of gas. Like, it can happen. It's pretty common. But anyways... That's the end of that clip right there. Pretty nice to see that they were able to take out a pretty rare vehicle, and also a very odd place for a bridge laying, a pontoon bridge laying truck to be at, considering that there aren't really a lot of rivers that have to be forded up in this area of the line. But moving a little bit further on down, we also saw the Russians exhibiting that very heartwarming, or more so house fire warming kind of levels of intelligence. The Russians got a little cold, so they just decided to set a house on fire to get warm. And then sit in the house as it catches on fire.
I've never thought about that. That's a good idea.
Look at this guy. He's like, nice warmth.
I'm telling you, the Russians are arsonists. Like, they're down deep. They are some fire-starting, like, firebug people. Like, their tanks catch on fire, they love it. They sit there and look at it. Now they're setting houses on fire. They're just a menace.
Man, remember that one Russian that watched the tank get blown up? The crew got wiped out in the hit, and then the tank caught on fire, and he was over there going, "Oh, Papa, oh," you know, he was like going crazy. Yeah, I think they are arsonists. I think there's a huge arson streak in the Russians. But moving on from that and out of the weird arsonist that we just saw, we're now moving on down into the area of Bakhmut, where we got to see the first ever pictures released by the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense of the Leopard 1A5. Many people just started covering this story today, that the Leopard 1A5 had just arrived. Of course, I have to say that we covered that story 5 days ago on this channel when a video came out showing a Leopard 1A5 in operation near the front. Actually, it was right near Bakhmut. We kind of got the video down to the area around Fedorivka Druha. But another picture came out today, or a series of pictures came out, which are finally starting to circulate around, showing these Leopard 1A5s in this area at the front. They are the first to ever be seen inside of Ukraine, and we have a feeling that they're probably not going to be put onto the front lines directly. Although they're getting a really high number of them. I think they're getting over 100 of these Leopard 1A5s from many Western countries. Hopefully they'll be used well. Their armor is not that great. It really won't stop anything except for small arms and some heavier rifles like, 50 calibers and things within that general size. But its gun is still a heavy hitter, and a lot of its systems, like the infrared, the sights, the optics, are pretty good, even compared to more modern Russian tanks like the T-72B or the B-3. So this thing might do well. They might decide to put this on the front lines, but for now, we understand that this is being relegated to non-combatant units or units that haven't been moved directly into continuous frontline action at the moment. But moving on from that little bit of news and on down towards Klishkivka, we did get to see Ukrainian soldiers showing us a small glimpse into what the battlefield looks like in this area right now.
Музыка, смотри. На приемы.
Дирекция не туда.
Где музыка, прием? Музыка, что смотрю. Приемы.
Sounds like popcorn out there.
Yeah, it does. You know what that sounds like? It sounds like a Civil War cannon. Like, it doesn't even sound like anything modern.
That's crazy. It really doesn't sound real.
This almost sounds like the noises that they insert into scenes in a war movie.
Yeah, that's kind of weird.
It's wild. It's really weird because, and it also is kind of like uncanny how movies are able to replicate the noises of a battlefield. But that's what the area is looking like right now. We can hear some explosions going on. From what we know, those little popping sounds were actually ammo that were burning off and exploding. It wasn't an ongoing firefight, but you could just hear the occasional sound of an artillery shell landing around and the ammunition cooking off, and give you kind of an idea of what the ambience of the normal battlefield around Klishkivka is looking like at the moment. But moving on from that and down into the area of Avdiivka, where the Russians are, by the way, not really trying as hard as they were, but they still are trying to move forward. There is still an ongoing battle here, and we got some video clips of this, but over the past 48 hours, but you see once again, the Russians are making practically no movement for the amount of effort that they're putting into this offensive. But moving on into our clips, the first one we got was a picture of a Ukrainian drone operator flying his drone, and also this AK-12 here that he is painted up. And it doesn't look that bad, actually. It's actually not that bad of a paint job, but pretty interesting to see, and hopefully his drone operating skills are as fleek as this AK-12 is. But moving on from that and into our next little bit of news, we also got to see that the 47th Brigade, we located this clip here just because the 47th Brigade is currently active near Avdiivka, but this training happened way behind the lines, about 120 miles away. But we did get to see that the 47th Brigade's bridge layers were in training today. We don't know why. Bridge laying is something that you usually do over something like the Dnipro River or a large body of water. And seeing them conducting bridge laying training and operating the tillers that help to set up the bridge, or at least use the bridge spans as ferries, is a very interesting thing to note, and may possibly suggest that the 47th Brigade may be redeployed to more aquatic areas of the battlefield, where they may be used to ferry equipment and forces across, to help them to extend a bridgehead possibly, and allow for the introduction of heavier and more advanced vehicles that will help them to push further towards a general direction. What I'm hinting towards is that once the offensive at Avdiivka is over and the Russians fail completely, which they still haven't yet, but they're very close to, the 47th Brigade may be deployed to the Kherson area to help ferry more equipment and forces across to help expand the Ukrainian bridgehead down there. At least that's what we can kind of get from the training that their bridge laying units are doing right now. But, that's taking a lot from nothing. Moving on from that and into the area of Avdiivka, we also got to see a Russian unit leaving behind wounded on the front line today in the middle of the fighting. Man, that symbol.
Man, that's that old deranged horsey.
Man, that's the horsey that you put down with a shotgun and send to the glue factory right there.
Have you seen that skit of Family Guy where it's like the horse and putting him down and everything? The horse grabbed the shotgun and shot. Yes, it makes me think of that.
How do you like it? How do you like it? He did all that.
Yeah.
But we see the Russians dragging along some luggage.
I feel like the Russians are going to get to the point where they have that stick and that red bag on the stick, like walking along like a kid that got kicked out of the house.
Yeah, I think they probably will. And
It might be coming soon.
And speaking of that, Matthew, we cannot forget to mention what's happening on screen because it's a little dark. It's actually really dark right here because the luggage, and also, by the way, some people are going to find that demeaning. I say that because YouTube doesn't really like it if we say the real words, but the luggage that they were dragging along, they decided it was a little too heavy, and they just decided to drop it off on the front line and leave it there. So we can see them just, leaving the guy, the luggage, and grabbing some stuff off of him, some of his coats that were keeping him warm in the colder weather, and then just walking off. And we can see the guy here, he's, the luggage, he's quite confused. And we can see the soldiers just walking away, just leaving him there to his fate, pretty much.
The Russians back to their old tricks, I guess, leaving the wounded behind.
And fate, karma, caught up to them very quickly for that. We can see right here, and I'll show you why they came under fire. Watch this. You can see them start hiding behind this tree, but if you watch these puddles, this one here, and this one right here where the mouse cursor is, watch, you'll see the little splashes of rifle fire right there. And we now see that they're pinned down, literally just about 150, 200 yards away where they just left that guy behind.
I'm told the video gets very graphic here in like the next 10 seconds.
They are absolutely right. Karma caught up to them really quickly, and I thank you for catching that because we can't even show the rest of the video. But the guy that they just left behind, he may have been lucky because karma, as I've said about 5 times now, just hit them literally, and it looks like the tree they were hiding under disappeared along with them. So we're not going to be able to show that. If you want to see the clip, go down into the description below where you can see the Ukraine war map for day 639, click on that link, and then go to the area of Avdiivka, and you can watch the entire clip in its entirety. Poetic justice is the best way to describe that video. But moving on from that, we can also see some Russians trying to hide from a Ukrainian FPV drone, and the FPV drone, of course, did FPV things and made sure that their efforts to hide were completely useless. Okay, well, we got some 90s in the streets kind of music. It's more so that busking kind of music that someone's trying to sell you on the subway. But we can see the FPV drone flying on in to this BMP, and we get, oh my lord, oh my heavens, look at that. Those silly little Russians trying to hide behind the hood of the engine bay of this BMP were seen by the FPV pilot, and he landed the thing right under the hood. We now see another one coming in. Oh, look at that. Oh, yeah, one of those cool little AK mags. The ones that aren't Bakelite, but they're red. I think it was another kind of a Bakelite mag that they introduced, I think in the late 70s or the early 80s. A pretty good collector's item, by the way. Those things fetch a very good price in the collector's market, but I don't think anyone will be collecting that. I think it was, it was destroyed in this incident.
Pause it right there. Oh, go back, pause it.
There?
What's the saying? What do you say about this little picture?
I don't know. What do you say?
And it was at this moment he knew.
He effed up.
Yep. The Ukrainians always edit that little pause in there, just like they're trying to make that meme every single time.
Dude, I like how this guy is just sitting there, and he's just looking right at the drone. He's like, oh. That's it. And we can see the drone hit the back of the tank. Of course,
Anthony Stark said, "Surprise, mother."
Surprise, mother. I wish I could say it, but we don't say stuff like that here. We try to keep it PG. Which is kind of weird when you think about it because we're showing a war. But anyways, moving on from that and into our next clip, we did get to see a Ukrainian MI8 conducting a Hydra rocket strike. This is the one where Captain America runs in, and then some guy with a red skull yells, "Captain America! I'm a great fan of your films!" But anyways, getting past the shitty joke, here's... Okay, well...
Oh, dude, that scared the hell out of me.
Now we now see it turning off and firing off its flares. We see the other MI8 doing the same as well. Man, I gotta tell you, they are just putting those MI8s through the paces these days. And that's the end of that clip, but a little bit of a look at the fire support provided at Avdiivka. Moving on from that, and a little bit further on down the lines, we also got to see near Novomikhailivka a failed move by the Russians. It was an interesting one, though, too. Because this little MTLB was covered, and I mean, it was literally covered in electronic warfare systems meant to jam the signal of drones. We can see the pack right here that was made to manage all of them, and we can see electronic warfare systems here, 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 and here. And then moving on into the next picture, we can see the entire thing was covered in protective elements. And then in the last picture, we can see, and this was pretty wild, Matthew, they have those 5.45 ammo crates, you know, the ones that they use for AK ammo, all over the side of this MTLB.
They sure do. I wonder what those look like up close.
I wonder. Maybe one day we'll be able to find out. But moving on...
That'd be cool to film a review of one.
That would be really cool to film a review of one. And, you know, just saying, hypothetically, we may have been able to track one down. It was very hard, but we are going to try and make a review on one. You know, not to spoil too much about it. It's not going to be a gun review. It's going to be more so of like a thing review. But it is incredibly cool because it comes in its crate and it comes with everything else included. And it hasn't been messed with since the times of the Soviet Union. By the way, a cool fun fact about it, it actually came from Ukraine before the war started. So that's a really cool fun fact about the little thing as well. But moving on from that, we also got to see a Ukrainian FPV operator in the area around Volodar. An Angry Penguin said, "Full of ammo?" Yes. Full of ammo. It's wild because the thing is intact completely, spam cans and all. It was insane to find, and especially where we found it. But anyways, moving on into this clip. When you see the FPV drone operator station here, GW North said, probably from Chernobyl. Oh, no. Dude, Matthew put a Geiger counter up to that thing, I think, like 3 days after it got home, and it was not radioactive, luckily.
Although the Geiger counter we have takes 3 business days to give a proper reading.
So, yeah, like maybe in another day, we'll hear coming from it, and then we'll be like, uh-oh. But for now, we're fine.
What did Operator Starsky call it? The magic sand from Chernobyl?
Yeah, the magic sand or something like that.
Зайди второй раз, не спеши. Батарейка есть. Если просто слишком большая высота, тебе слишком большой угол придется делать.
Is this babushka?
FPV завожаю вид.
Maybe.
Hey, Discord.
Someone just hopped in, Matthew. They're gonna go, "Hey, yo, what's up, homie? What happening?" And they're gonna be like, "Oh, we're just bombing Russians, you know." Just, you know, chilling with the dudes, chilling with the boys.
Батарейка у тебя до хера. Там, где распиздовано, правее, правее. Вот, распиздовано. Да, справа от всем. И там, где распиздовано, по центру дыра. Да, как можно раньше выйди на правильный курс.
Man, one guy is getting a lot of fun out of this. He went, he's like, drop it right on him.
Вот так, чтобы не приходилось. Вот это черное. Да. Ветер сносит.
The FPV drone is just easing its way on down towards the Russian position. And it looks like they just aborted. But the drone is getting on low battery now, so it's now or never. They're going to have to slam this thing into a dugout, or they're not going to have the chance.
Попробуем сделать как бы все, что в наших силах, но ветром шатает очень сильно.
Well, send that guy into a speech.
Man, someone just hopped on the Discord call and said, "Have you ever tried like putting it in like rice?"
Мы заходим. Просто очень тяжелая цель из-за ветра, ну и размеров.
And Angry Penguin, I would actually have to agree with you. I don't know how a lot of AKs last long shooting 7in6 or 7in10 rounds, because all of it has corrosive gunpowder inside of it, so it will eat your gun away unless you clean it just extremely well after each time you shoot it.
Отлично!
Oh,
damn.
All in one!
Это было мощно, по-любому.
And that's the end of that clip, but amazing work by this Ukrainian drone operators right there. And so moving on from Volodar, and a little bit further on down, we're getting close to one of the wild clips that's just like raw chaos. But first, we have to get to this Toss thermobaric launcher that was hit and destroyed by Ukrainian action. And so, let me get to that real quick. And here we go. We can see the FPV drone right here. We can see the Toss down there. And the drone is about to hit dead on into the Toss launching system on top of the T-72. And bada boom, bada bing. We didn't get to see the aftermath, but it did hit dead onto the launcher, most likely detonating the ammunition if it had any inside of it. But that's not what we're really here for in this area of the line. I gotta show y'all something that I literally just captioned "laugh my ass off" because it was the funniest clip I saw all night. Let me just show it to y'all. And then I'll explain it after we see it.
Oh my god, man, he's wearing a thermal blanket and they're using thermal vision. Oh, stupid. It's a ghost. Ooh. Ooh.
Man, watch.
He's about to be a real ghost. Oh.
Watch out. Some people in the South might go, hey, look, he's with us. But,
whoa,
I gotta tell you, this is a little wild. So to explain what's happening, this guy is scared of a thermal camera on a drone seeing him. So what he does is he gets a thermal blanket and he wraps it around himself, but then he must have forgot that it's broad daylight, and the Ukrainians don't use the thermal drones in broad daylight. So instead of concealing himself from a drone, it makes him more visible than he would have been otherwise.
Big doofus.
What an idiot!
It's like literally like he's wearing a like coat or something. Look at the piece dragging behind him. It's all shredded and crap. Dummy.
Oh my goodness. Oh, that looks so stupid. That looks so dumb. I can't believe that someone would even do something like that in broad daylight. It blows me away how stupid these people can be. It's unbelievable. It's like, are they even using any intelligence at all? I mean, you know.
Nah, you gotta have it to use it, man.
Man. Oh my lord.
I mean, come on, man. Don't run through the trenches with thermal blankets. I mean, come on, Jack. Do a push-up.
Oh, dude, it's so stupid. Especially when he starts running at the beginning of it. It almost looks like he has a cape like a superhero or something. Look at him. It's just bouncing around and stuff.
It's Bliot, man. He's going to the rescue. He's going to go get Ivan in the trench. The British are coming. I mean, the Ukrainians are coming.
Oh, my lord. Oh my lord. Well, that's all we can show of it because, you know, it's just the same thing over and over. But anyways, moving on from that, you know, call that guy whatever you want, but it was stupid. You know, that's all I could say. But moving on from that, we also got to see a BMP-3 get destroyed. This was in the area of Novoprokopivka, and by the way, snowfall has already begun in the area of Robotny. And we see the vehicle, well, the BMP here, smoking and burning. It appears that it had already been stricken by the time this drone was able to start filming. Oh, and we've got the ammo detonation, but it appears that the video then turned into a slideshow for just a quick moment.
Also, real quick, I saw someone ask a question. Someone said, "Are either one of you involved or have been involved in any armed forces branch, or are you civilian?" We're both civilians in law school, not in the armed forces.
We're both civvies. Ew, nasty civvies.
Oh, those civilians. Oh.
Man, how the hell could they ever talk about anything with the military? We've got a gatekeeper.
Now, you know who hates civilians more than the U.S. military?
Who?
The Russians.
Why is that, Matthew? What? Oh, now I get it.
Yeah,
I get it now.
You know that dark humor.
Man, that dark humor. We're really on the edge. Y'all really seeing it tonight. But anyways,
we're in the pit tonight.
Man, they're about to send us to the ranch. But anyways, moving on from that and into Nova Mikhailivka, we also got to see that a Shahed was destroyed. If the video loads, of course, you know, we have to just pray that, you know, we are able to load the videos. But here we go. They about to get it. What the dude? Why in the world did that sound like a CS:GO speech line? Like it went. I was like, damn, dude. Also, huge respect for this man using an over 100-year-old machine gun to shoot down a modern-day drone. What a move right there. He shot it down with a dinner plate. I love the deep fried audio at the end. Man. Anyways, moving on from that, we also got another clip of another Ukrainian AA battery near Zaporizhia operating and also shooting down a Shahed. So here's a clip. That looks like a Dishka or an NSV. And jeez, the muzzle flash couldn't be any brighter on this thing. You see this, you're blind.
Oh, it was a technical.
That's the end of that clip, but wonderful to see that the Ukrainians have loads of anti-air batteries in this area of Zaporizhia operating tirelessly to try and shoot down these drones. With that, we're now going to be moving on out of Ukraine and on into the Middle East. And I have to be honest with y'all, we don't really have a lot to cover here. We're covering it just to make sure that we include it in our news segments, considering that many of y'all do enjoy our coverage. But considering the ceasefire began around 16 to 18 hours ago, from my understanding, we have not really gotten a lot of information and footage of the ongoing conflict, because for the next 5 days, this conflict has largely been put on hold, at least for the Israeli Defense Forces, as well as Hamas itself inside of the Gaza Strip. Although we do have some information showing that Hamas may not honor the ceasefire completely. But moving on into the area of southern Lebanon, we did see an AH-64D operated by the Israeli Defense Forces firing at Hezbollah targets in the region. Firing an AGM-114 Hellfire. That's the end of that clip. Not really a lot to add to it, but moving on from that and down into the area of Haifa, we also saw that multiple interceptions began to happen over Haifa, possibly from Hezbollah rockets that have been fired over the area of northern Israel. We can see here on the security camera the flash of the Iron Dome deploying one of its missiles and intercepting a rocket right above the city itself, almost right above the launcher as well.
Is this a house?
From what we know, this is some kind of a house. It almost looks like a prison, though, I'm not going to lie.
Hey, man. They build houses in Israel much better than they build them in the U.S. This thing's made out of solid concrete.
That's concrete, baby. But
yeah, really. Over here, you're lucky to get a piece of plywood in the wall these days.
Dude, if a Hezbollah rocket hit this house, you could be eating dinner, and it would hit the wall of the dinner, like of the dining room, and all you'd hear is bing, and they go, "Oh, was that a rocket?" But anyways, moving on from that clip. And on into our next one, we also got to see some pictures of the sky over Haifa, and it appears that that video was only catching the beginning of it. There were a large amount of either interceptions that occurred over Haifa at a single moment, or this rocket ended up exploding in fantastic fashion and we just didn't see that on the security footage. Either way, it does appear that Hezbollah is beginning to pick up the slack that Hamas might not be able to over these next 5 days, and they're now beginning to fire their own rockets into northern Israel. Moving on into the Gaza Strip, we did hear that humanitarian support provided by the Egyptians has finally crossed the border into the area of Rafah, although there is no Israeli supervision involved in what these trucks may be carrying. There were 200 trucks that crossed the border today alone, and from what is publicly stated, they are all carrying humanitarian aid. We'll be taking that at face value until we get information to contradict that. I think the flag of Egypt is flying on, I can't really tell, because there's a lot of flags in the Middle East that have this red, white, and black color scheme to them, but I can't really tell what the symbol is in the middle to be able to tell y'all whether that's an Egyptian flag or not. It most likely is. I mean, you see that apparently someone's trying to get some political bidding done on the side of this humanitarian aid. When you see another truck.
Wow, I don't know about the like the political ad like you just mentioned. That's sort of different.
Yeah, you know, it's political aid sponsored by so-and-so party. It's like, I don't really know about that. Maybe it resonates well with the Egyptians if the Egyptians are the ones who are providing this aid.
But like on the side of our aid, don't we put just like, you know, U.S. aid or something, like something very generic? It seems like they're like promoting like the exact politician that sent it.
Yeah, I would have to look into that a little bit more, but honestly, I would have to detest putting the face of someone who's a political figure on the side of humanitarian aid. That's not necessarily a good look. And also, it's not a good look to do that and also look like George Costanza. I'm not lying.
Look, it's the people fund. It's the people fund.
He's about to say, I'm an eggplant! He's about to say something crazy. It's the summer of George! But anyways, moving on from that, and out of the news near the Rafah border checkpoint, and moving on into the area of Erez, we did get to see some footage released by the IDF today of the release of hostages. And look at that CH-53 Sea Stallion. And there go the helicopters to go pick up the hostages. And that's the end of that clip. We heard that there were apparently, I think, 23 hostages released. 10 of them were Israeli, and 13 of them were citizens of Thailand. Moving on from that bit of news and into the area of Beit Lahia, we also got to see the EGOZ unit, or the EGOZ unit, I'm assuming, or the EGOZ unit, Lego my Ego, Special Forces unit operating in the area. All of the footage that we show today of combat actions, from what we understand, all occurred before the ceasefire took effect. We can see them moving past some Namer APC. Wait a minute, was that a flag of Ukraine on that? That is a flag of Ukraine on that APC. Huh.
Yeah, that's kind of weird.
That's really weird. Now Hamas is probably going to say, look, the Ukrainians are involved or something like that. And then how do we explain that? But anyways, we're probably about to see that Merkava blast someone. Oh, never mind, we did. Oh.
Is that a Nokia? I see the indestructible Nokia over there, I think.
I do. I see that, but ew. They got the 7.62 Pro Mags. Like a bunch of, like, cheapsters. Jeez, man. I bet you the springs stop working in this thing after you load them.
What's the black tube things right there sitting next to the Nokia?
I don't know. I really have no idea with those. I wouldn't even be able to tell you. So I think we're just gonna observe them. Oh, Pablo Escobar has been here.
Nah, man, that's not coke. That's plastic explosive.
Yeah.
Man, I said on like Dora the Explorer or something. Swiper, what is this? It is C4.
And we can see them looking at some
mess.
pillows. And that's the end of the clip. Oh, we just got to see some pillows at the end. But moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see the Israeli Special Forces at work near the area of Jabalia. This was the Maglan Special Forces unit that was in this area. Something about this footage reminds me of like a day or two ago. I swear we've seen this. No, we haven't. No, we haven't. Some of this footage, I'm not going to lie, reminds me of other clips we've seen. Others look fresh, so... We've seen this. Oh, wait a minute. Hold up. There was a little bit of a whoopsie, or an oopsie daisy that was filmed right here. It appears that he wasn't holding the AT weapon too well, because, can we slow this now? No, we can't. Did y'all notice that it was flung over his shoulder and apparently fell off the balcony? Like, watch this. Y'all can see that right there. I have a feeling this man's neck is got a very bad crick in it. Yikes. That's the end of that.
Did he have it pointed the right way?
Oh yeah, he had it pointed the right way. It did hit. But it doesn't look like he managed that recoil too well. But moving on from that into Gaza, we also heard on a little bit of a more sour note that as soon as the ceasefire went into effect, 15 minutes after its official effectiveness date began, Hamas started to fire off rockets from inside of central Gaza again. The Iron Dome intercepted all of them, but this could technically be considered a a violation of the ceasefire agreement between the two parties, which shows that the Hamas forces may not have all that much of good faith going into this contractual agreement between the two parties. Matthew, tell us more about that.
Tell you about what now?
It's just some contract stuff. But anyways, moving on from that.
Oh, damn, man.
I just
what in the world?
I just realized that we have to move a little bit quicker because we were starting to run overtime again for the news. But we also saw some Israeli forces moving around the outskirts before the ceasefire took effect. Taking the way to the dark side, I want to be your special man, or whatever the song was. But anyways, we can see them firing in the bush. Oh, he's got an ACOG. Good scope. See them moving through the urban areas. Very quickly, by the way. A lot of them do not have any kind of combat pack at all, except for camelbacks, so that way they can have some water. See him tossing a grenade. You see this machine gunner laying down fire. We now see them clearing a building.
You know, it's weird when you really look at it, like how many soldiers wear GoPros. The soldiers went from back in the day not really being able to show war to now everybody wants to film it and upload it to the internet. It's kind of weird. Like back in the day, people used to like really go into war, come out traumatized. And I'm not saying they don't anymore, but it seems like now people want to share it with other people. It's kind of strange.
Yeah, we get a lot. Like, you know, Vietnam was the first war that was televised. Korea was the first war, well, really, World War I was the first war where anyone really got to see what battlefields looked like while a war was going on. Vietnam was the first war on television. And it seems as though the war in Ukraine was the first one on the internet. And now it seems as though every war after that is going to be on the internet. Almost every single thing that can happen in war, you will be able to see on film almost when it's happening. It's really wild to think about that, because war used to be so far away from most of the general population, and now people can get an actual look into the life and battles that soldiers engage in on a daily basis, almost from the same people every single day. It really gives a deep insight on what wars really do look like. But moving on from that little bit of footage, that is all we had from Israel today in our Middle Eastern news segment. But moving on from that and into the area of Kyiv, it is time for us to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 639 of the war. Can y'all believe that we are only 60 days away from the 700th day of the war? Well, you know, it sounds like that's a while away, but that's only 2 months away at this point. And that's insane to think that we've been doing this for so long. And so many of y'all have been here watching it with us. But anyways, we've got to cover tradition. We must have the speech.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці і українки. Щойно завершив перемовини з президентом Латвії. Змістовна розмова. Говорили про оборонну підтримку для нашої держави, для наших воїнів, про сталість такої підтримки. Зокрема, обговорили виробництво та постачання боєприпасів, артилерії, калібр 155, а також питання щодо медеваків, спеціальних броньованих машин для евакуації наших поранених воїнів. Я вдячний Латвії за незмінну підтримку наших європейських перспектив, всієї роботи заради початку переговорів про вступ України в Європейський Союз. Сьогодні я поінформував пана президента про виконання нашою державою рекомендацій Єврокомісії і про нашу готовність до політичного рішення в грудні, яке було обіцяне європейською стороною і яке відкриває процес переговорів. Очікуємо на це рішення і на виконання Європейським Союзом обіцянки. Детально обговорили з паном президентом механіку підготовки відповідного рішення ЄС. Говорив сьогодні з Марком Рютте, прем'єр-міністром Нідерландів. Подякував за надану Україні підтримку, за нещодавнє рішення про додаткові 2 мільярди євро на наступний рік. Це важливий сигнал і для інших партнерів. Захист нашого європейського способу життя має продовжуватись, і єдність в Європі для цього ключовий елемент. Обговорили з Марком також нашу спільну роботу щодо формули миру, щодо таких важливих гуманітарних ініціатив, як наша програма «Зерно з України». Працюємо разом, щоб зберегти стабільність в критичних регіонах світу, а отже, уберегти наш континент від кризових хвиль. Провів сьогодні важливе, доволі непросте засідання Ставки. Не лише щодо ситуації на фронті зараз, хоч це був, як завжди, один із основних пунктів наші оборонні дії, наші наступальні дії, Авдіївка, Донецький напрямок, Мар'їнка, Куп'янський напрямок, південні напрямки. Значима частина засідання сьогодні була присвячена комплексу тих питань, щодо яких наші воїни і все суспільство очікують справедливих відповідей. Це стосується мобілізації, і демобілізації, ротації у Збройних силах України. Питання щодо строковиків, які були призвані на службу до початку повномасштабного вторгнення. Звичайно, окрему увагу приділили ситуації з роботою ВЛК та воєнкоматів. Те, про що говорять солдати, те, про що говорять командири, має бути вирішено. Сьогодні щодо цього були перші доповіді і главкома Залужного, і міністра оборони Умєрова, міністра внутрішніх справ Клименка, міністра охорони здоров'я Ляшка, начальника Генштабу Шаптали. Я очікую більш змістовного опрацювання кожного з таких питань. І урядом, і військовим, і конкретних пропозицій щодо державних рішень. Я дякую всім, хто дбає про Україну і українців. Я дякую кожному і кожній, хто б'ється заради держави і працює заради українських інтересів. Слава Україні!
And Hiram Slava.
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 639 of the war. And I gotta say again, what time has passed? It's been a long time since the first address from President Zelensky on that first day of the war, and we've been here, and all of y'all have been here, for 639 days. Tomorrow is going to be the 640th day of the war, this Saturday, and it's insane to think that we are really just 60 days away from that 700th day of the war. The next 100 days, from day 600 to 700, that Ukraine has survived against the quote-unquote second best military in the world, now second best in Ukraine. It's amazing to think that we've been able to have this journey with every single one of y'all so far, and for as long as it may last, I hope that we are able to be here with every single one of y'all, and y'all are able to be here with us as we continue to get out the news and spread the information of what's been going on in Ukraine, and not only that, help out the folks over there through the Sunday fundraisers. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so going into our final question and poll segment, we have 2 polls to cover. And the first one says the Pentagon is moving toward letting AI weapons autonomously decide to kill humans. And what are your thoughts? 56% said that's not good, that's a bad idea. 17% said I have moral concerns about this. Another 17% said good, that will make it efficient. And 9% said unsure. And, I don't ever want to get to the point where I feel like we should become efficient with killing each other. That seems like a bad goal to me. And in fact, I believe that war should be painful, because if war becomes painless, everybody's going to want to start a war 24/7. And there has to be consequences when people start wars. And unfortunately, war has to have that bad side to it, or otherwise, what's holding anyone back? So to me, also on this AI issue, we should not be letting weapons decide on its own to kill humans. That should be something that soldiers do and not computers. And that's pretty straightforward from a common sense perspective. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I'd actually have to disagree a little bit and take a bit of a minority opinion. I think that having AI in war and making war more efficient is a necessity, especially to make sure that we have an edge over our adversaries around the world, especially when we talk about things like being able to get a one-up on them. Now, I say that it should be limited. I don't think that AI should be making decisions on the field, like on the ground, as to who dies, civilians, soldiers, and the like. I think that AI, though, certainly has a place in things like, say, naval engagements, where it's not really a question of, who gets to live and who gets to die. It's more so, what is a combatant vessel and what is a merchant ship, or something along those lines. Or for example, in the air, where it's very clear what's a commercial aircraft and what's a military aircraft, and therefore the decisions that the AI makes are really ones that would be made exactly the same by some pilot or some captain of a vessel who would have given the exact same commands in that kind of situation. I do not think, however, that it should be implemented into the infantry or anything involving ground forces, because I feel like that could go very badly very quickly, especially if it's given the decision of who will live and who will die. We don't know if it's going to start picking civilians over soldiers for folks who will die. I don't really, we don't really know, and I don't really think that's a smart idea to implement it that way. And
also, if it can think on its own, then at some point, if the side that controls the AI system starts to lose, and the AI realize that, wouldn't it want to turn on that person to side with the other people? That's going down like a rabbit hole. But if AI is that smart to make its own decisions, then it could make its own decision in a larger sense.
It could. It possibly could, but I have a feeling that the AI is probably going to be very limited in this role, and usually things like that are. And for example, things like the CWIS, the close-in weapon system, it already has kind of like a semi-autonomous AI system. Its radar that's placed right above the 20mm Vulcan actually detects aircraft and will automatically lock on to whatever it considers to be the most pertinent target in the area. That's also something that you can notice on some videos on YouTube, because it sometimes will target commercial airliners that end up flying over, naval vessels. It does that because it will consider it the most pressing target in the airspace on radar at the moment. But the final say is still given to a person on board the ship, like, say the captain or the weapons operator, who will then order it to fire or not fire. But it's not that far away from already being a mostly autonomous AI making decisions. And the AI would, of course, be programmed to make the same decision as a commercial airliner: do not fire, let it pass over. But only in situations like that could I see it being used, where it's very clear what should be shot down and what shouldn't be, or, what should be sunk or what shouldn't be sunk. The more gray area moral questions in the field, I don't think that's something that an AI should be making that decision on. And as far as making war more or less efficient, I would have to say there's always a strive to make wars more efficient. The machine gun is an extension of that. The tank, the airplane being used as a weapon of war, poison gas, everything was always to try and make war more effective, because to make war more effective gives you an advantage over your opponents in the field. And the United States has always believed in making wars more effective, and that's why we are able to be the best at fighting a war. So I would have to say that in this one instance, I could see AI being used in limited circumstances, because fighting wars are always about trying to get that little advantage over your opponents, and I have a feeling that AI, provided it's in limited circumstances, could give an advantage. But that's just my opinion. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and I will say, even though I don't like the idea of AI weapons deciding who it's killing on its own, moving on to this next poll, the question is, if China develops AI killer drones, will this essentially force the West to do the same? 72% said yes, the West must compete. 10% said, maybe, but I need more info. 12% said no, there are other solutions, and 5% said unsure. And if we encounter a problem like this, and this was inspired by Mark the astronomer, leaving out the middle part there because I forgot it, but this was a problem inspired by him. And I will say that if China starts to develop these drones, just like with nuclear weapons, we have to kind of match it. It's kind of like a requirement, or otherwise they'll have such an advantage over us that we might lose a war if it ever broke out. So in that circumstance alone, I think it might be necessary. And even though I don't like it, sometimes you have to have a necessary evil to make sure you have an equal footing. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that we certainly need to match adversaries and their technological abilities every way we can, and to also add to how AI could be useful, especially for the Air Force, because the Air Force is already working on this, and it does look very promising. Let's say right now, we have 300 F-15s right now in the U.S. Air Force, something about that. Something around that number. With those F-15s being integrated into AI-operated aircraft, air superiority aircraft, like for example, a fully AI-automated F-15, that one pilot of that one F-15 now becomes the one pilot of 5 F-15s, including his own and the 4 AI F-15s with him, and he can now force multiply the Air Force by a factor of 5, and still have the same amount of pilots that we have right now. And that's the kind of advantage that AI can give the United States if we implement it properly. And I think that when we see the Chinese trying to implement something like, killer drones, things like that, we need to find a way to implement that ourselves, and even make it more efficient and cheaper and more effective if we can. That would be my opinion, because you never win wars. You never win anything, for that matter, by limiting yourself. You always have to match what the other person is doing and then do it even better. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion again. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and that was our last poll for the night. So that's enough deep thinking about AI. Honestly, AI scares the hell out of me, especially when you start seeing things happen like with OpenAI, with the CEO getting fired and then brought back. And then it turns out maybe the reason he got fired was because they discovered that AI had general intelligence, and they were concerned about it. Kind of weird. But anyways, Moving on from that, that was our last poll. So we're moving into our super chat questions, and our first one is going to be from Enforcer for President, longtime channel legend, who throws in a $100 donation. Massive support, and thank you very much, Enforcer for President, for that. They said, "Hello, LOC. I believe the U.S. should continue support for Ukraine and even ramp it up because they have been at war for 639 days, and Israel just began, and Israel has weapons already. And what are your thoughts?"
And I completely agree, Enforcer for President. We see that the Israelis have this well in hand, providing tens of billions of dollars of support to a country that has the situation largely well under control. Doesn't really make a lot of sense, in my opinion. At the beginning of the war, I had a different mindset. I said we should support them both equally. But it's just clear at this point, 49 days in, and, you know, of course our map says it's only day 31 because it's the 31st day of our reporting of the conflict, you know, continuously, but I don't see them needing monetary or military support from the United States. Everything's well under control. Everything's fine. I think the money that we're trying to allocate to Israel should end up going to Ukraine because unlike Israel, Ukraine doesn't have the situation completely under control and in hand like the Israelis have. The Israelis are able to do whatever they want at this point. They've made that very clear in the Gaza Strip. So they don't need our help. Ukraine, however, is still trying to retake their territory that's been occupied by the Russians since 2014 in some areas and since 2022 in most areas. That requires a massive amount of support in terms of just raw funds, and not only that, in terms of equipment as well. And I think it's very important to make sure that we prioritize who needs to support based off of how things really are going. And based off of what we're seeing right now, it's very clear Ukraine does need a massive amount of support monetarily and militarily compared to people like Israel. You know, and I'm not saying that we don't support Israel. We support Israel a great deal, especially given what's happened. But at the same time, we have to face facts. Israel doesn't need tens of billions of dollars. Ukraine does. Israel is fine. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for the massive amount of support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because without folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. And so with that, thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, and also, I was seeing that, Matthew. I was like, what? Wait a minute, what happened? I was like, why was he gone? But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
Man, YouTube, the chat lagged, and I clicked the wrong person. So sorry about that, another nice guy.
And really quickly, I'd like to address that because we are so sorry. There's been so much accidental friendly fire in the live chat lately. YouTube's control room, not just for Matthew, but for me too, has been screwing up heavily lately. YouTube, of course, once again made the system worse for us. So sometimes we accidentally end up deleting chats in the live chat that we weren't supposed to, or banning people that weren't supposed to be banned. So very sorry about that, another nice guy, because it was entirely misinput. If it wasn't Matthew's input, it was probably going to be mine, because the live chat did the exact same thing for me at the exact same time when I was seeing all of that happening. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And thank you so much once again for the massive amount of support in Force for President and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And oh man, we're moving on to the next one, which goes to SMM814 me with a star. And they put in a $100 donation. And thank you very much for that support. That is also extremely generous. And we do truly appreciate it because it does keep the channel running. And they said for the succulent Chinese meal fund.
What is the charges? Eating a meal? A succulent Chinese meal? How
Get your hands off my...
Get your hands off my breeches! This is the man who touched me on the breeches here. Oh, unhand me, sir. Oh, yes. I see you know your judo well. Good one. And you, sir, are you ready to receive my limp breeches? But anyways, moving on from that, I gotta thank you so much for the massive amount of support and supporting the Chinese Meal Fund. I gotta tell you, I'm a sucker for good Chinese food. Honestly, I'm a sucker for any good food. Y'all can kind of tell when I'm on camera. But nevertheless, I gotta thank you so much for the massive amount of support, because not only Are you helping this channel to keep on running? You're helping us to get those succulent Chinese meals. And so thank you so much once again for supporting this channel and helping us to keep it running, because it means a great deal to us. You're helping to keep my vision alive. Well, really, both Matthew and my vision alive. Our vision. It's communist now. It's Nasha vision. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And what is it, real quick, what does it mean to be a sucker for something? What the hell does that mean?
Like, I don't really know. I think it's just a common phrase, you know? Like, why do you gotta ask?
I've never really thought about that, but for some reason, when you said that time, my brain was like going down like the alternative path. I was sitting there thinking, what does that mean exactly? Like, I've heard everybody said that forever, but at the same time, I don't think anybody really thinks about what that means. What do you think it means?
I don't know, man. Like, I just used the phrase, man. Why do you got to give me an existential crisis about a phrase in the middle of the show, man? What the hell are you trying to do to me?
Man, I don't know. But anyways, before we move on to our next Super Chat question, we are going to address the poll that's currently running. And the question is, could AI become an existential threat to humanity as it develops? 84% said yes, and 16% said no. And surprisingly, the 16% were actually very volatile and vehement about what they were saying about it. Some people think strongly that AI is a load of hype, and some people think that it actually is a big threat. To me, I think that it is a big threat. Obviously, there is a lot of marketing that goes into it and things like that, so they can try to sell it to the public. But at the same time, there's a reason why so many people that actually know what they're talking about on it, unlike us, that are concerned, they write letters about it, and they're also meeting with the U.S. government to try to put things in place to try to regulate it before it gets out of hand. And I think that's smart because we don't want something that we really don't understand, and even the scientists that create it really don't fully understand it yet. And they're trying to figure out exactly how far can it go. So I think it needs to be controlled. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, and this is going to be a hot take because the majority of y'all would disagree with this, but I'd have to go with that 16% that says it's not going to be a big danger. Now, I'm not going to say that AI is just completely useless and it's overhyped. No, AI is going to be the next big thing. It is already clearly becoming that right now. But I don't think it's going to necessarily become dangerous, at least to me. I know a lot of people, you know, are scared of AI because, you know, of things like the Terminator and, you know, War Games, the movie, which also depicted AI to be, you know, crazy and rogue. And a lot of movies and a lot of media depict AI as being something that goes out of control, rogue, and tries to destroy humanity. I just don't see it that way because looking through history, and also, oh, damn, I didn't even know that, Matthew. Thank you for sharing that with me. But looking through history, there has always been a great amount of apprehension and fear about the next big thing. There was a big amount of apprehension and fear about computers when they came around at all. You know, not AI, just computers in general. There was a huge apprehension about steam power when it came around. People were scared it was going to blow up and kill everyone. There was a huge apprehension about electricity, that people would just be electrocuted by, you know, electrical cables. You know, everyone thought you would just be killed by that in a single instant. There's been huge apprehension and fear about really every single invention that's come around, and a lot of it, well, really all of it, has mostly ended up being for naught and not really proven to be substantial at all. So, in my honest opinion, I would have to say I don't really consider it to be that much of a risk. Of course, if you do stupid things with it, it will become a risk. But I have a feeling that people have so much fear in them, the 86% of y'all have so much fear in them, that if y'all implement it, it will be incredibly safe and well implemented in the start so that way nothing can go wrong. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And I'm not saying that I'm an expert on AI, I'm just telling you my opinion. I see a lot of people really getting violent, and they're like, you have no damn idea! And they're like, well, calm down, it's just an opinion, you know, you have one too. It doesn't mean it's wrong, it's just an opinion, and that's my take on it. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next super chat is going to go to Richard Ager, who puts in a, not a 20, he puts in a $50 donation. And huge shout out to you, Richard, and thank you very much for that support. He says, hearing next to nothing here on Ukraine down under at the moment, and thanks again, y'all, for the fantastic coverage.
And thank you so much for supporting our coverage, and thank you for enjoying the channel so well. I know, and this is something that's not just happening in Australia at all. This is something that's happening in the United States too. like news companies like CNN have completely stopped covering it almost for the most part. They've moved on to other things and have just completely left Ukraine to the wayside, except for a mere mention every minute of every few hours or so. That's all they get for Ukraine at this point. And I hate to see it because I know that although Ukraine is an amazing cause to support, it's a great one, and I don't think anyone can deny that. Like y'all who pay attention to it, it is a very important thing to do. Many people don't pay attention to things unless if it's shoved in front of their face all the time by big news companies like that. And a lot of people are going to start losing focus on Ukraine over that. We try our best to keep people paying attention, and I hope we've been doing a good job with that, and I hope you all have enjoyed what we've done. And I got to thank you so much for the support, Richard, and enjoying what we've been doing as well, and appreciating it, because it's becoming rarer and rarer that people are really trying to put attention on what's happening in the war and continuing support so that way we can see the Ukrainians be led to victory, and not only that, the Western world triumph over such an evil as Russia is. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, real quick, I saw Hillbilly in the live chat. They said, I've never seen either one of these gentlemen. Are they 40 or so? No, we're not 40. I'm actually 60. I hate to say it. Mentally, I feel like I'm getting to 60 a lot quicker than I should be. But no, I'm actually 23, and the Enforcer is 21, I believe.
About
right?
to be 22.
About to be 22, but I feel like I'm aging fast because of law school and the finals coming around. But no, we're actually not 40, believe it or not.
Yeah, we're actually pretty young, and that's something that I honestly, looking back, hindsight 2020, I wish we had never even told people how old we were, because that seems to be the thing we get the most flack on. Before I said that we were in our 20s, everyone just, everyone on the internet just accepted what we said because it's pretty solid statements that, we made back then. And then as soon as we said, oh, we're in our 20s, then a lot of people wanted to just give us flack just because we were in our 20s, although what we're saying isn't wrong. And that's something that honestly I wish we had never shared. But the cat's out of the bag. We are in our early 20s.
Hell, man! After we got on the podcast on the camera and stuff, there's no way you couldn't have told our age from that, because I look like I should be in high school, and you look like you might be maybe in a good solid salaryman job at this point.
Yeah, in my 30s or something. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Mark, the recidivistic astronomer, yet again, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Mark. He is throwing in a hell of a lot of support tonight, and we do appreciate it very much. Mark is the channel legend. And he says, I received a shot glass set from Ukraine, made out of 30mm autocannon casings, a poem, and signed by troops, and take the next chat as I ask no questions and tell no lies.
And thank you so much for the support, Mark. And really cool to hear that you got that. Honestly, that would be pretty neat. I don't drink, but that would be really cool just to drink anything out of a 30mm shell casing. Make sure it's washed, though, because those the powder that a lot of the post-Soviet countries use actually has corrosive salts inside of it and other elements. It's so bad it can actually eat the rifling out of a rifle. So make sure before you drink out of them, wash them thoroughly, because you don't want that stuff inside of you. It will do bad things to you. But beyond that, really cool to hear that you got some of those. Honestly, I'll have to start looking around to see if I can get some of them. But honestly, the Ukrainian 545 ammo box is probably about as cool as I'm going to get for anything from Ukraine. And by the way, disclaimer, it was not smuggled to us through the mail. That did not happen. I just bought it from someone that had it and happened to get it before the war even started. So everything is completely fine there. There was no questionable stuff that happened with it. It's all good. But with that, thank you so much once again for support, Mark. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Hal Rose, who puts in a $33 donation, and huge shout to Hal as well, who is a channel legend also for that very generous support. He says, Enforcer Matt, 3 is my favorite number, but I'm helping get you 2 through law school. And pick a question, please. And thank you very much, Hal. We do need to get through law school, and your support helps us get through law school as well. And law school, Enforcer, have you seen that meme where it's like there's some guy, I think he's like a leader in one of those like African country governments or something like that. He's like, every time I come here, I get abused.
Yeah,
That's what I feel like. That's what I feel like going to law school every single day now, especially now that the finals are coming around. I feel like that. But anyways, Enforcer, what say you?
I got to thank you so much for sharing with us, Hal. I could not tell that 3 was your favorite number. Everything you did had a 3 in it. Like a $333 donation to a fundraiser, a $33 super chat, a $333 super chat. Everything you do has 3s in it. And that's really cool, actually. I think that's neat that you like put your favorite number into everything you do. That's really cool. But thank you so much as well for helping us to get through law school, because law school, believe it or not, everyone, law school is not cheap at all. It's actually mind-blowing how expensive it is sometimes for the quality you get. It's just like, this costs this much money. But, and I'm being completely honest with you all, so if anyone is from the law school, I mean, the best thing I can say is up the game a little bit. That's like, I don't mean to level with y'all, but that's the best I can say. And also that isn't for everyone. That's really just for like one specific class. It's like, how am I paying thousands of dollars for this? This is like what $300 maybe. This is ridiculous. But nevertheless, I do have to thank you, Hal Rose, for helping us to get through law school. Because while we were a little shaky there, and we also voiced that with y'all a little bit, we both have largely decided we're going to try and follow through law school through its course, and pass the bar and become licensed attorneys. Whether we even practice as attorneys or not, that'll be a whole other thing, but it'll be good.
Oh, hell, if I'm going through law school and paying all that money, I'll definitely be practicing without a doubt.
Man, I'm just going to flash it like an FBI badge at people. Oh, hey, I passed law school. But anyways, I'm just kidding. I'll probably become a
I used to work with a guy that went to law school, by the way, when I worked at that retail store before we started YouTube. There was a fella in there that worked in there as a assistant manager that had actually been to law school. And I was like, well, what are you doing here if you have a law degree? He was like, well, decided not to go that route. I was like, well, damn, you spent all that money on law school and then didn't go that way. That's kind of weird.
Dude, he said that while his back was being broken by the crippling debt he was under, wasn't he?
Yeah, I don't even understand. Working the job that I was working, it's like, how do you pay down the debt on a law school loan like that? I didn't understand how he was managing that.
I wouldn't even know either. Like, I can't even think of anything to explain that away. But anyways, with that, thank you so much once again for helping us out with this, Hal, and helping to support this channel and help us to keep this thing running. And we will make sure to get a question from the chat. And so what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and the question from the chat is going to go to Frank, who says, do you think that Ukraine will reach Crimea first or push Muscovy out of Luhansk Oblast?
I think we're probably going to see them reach Crimea. I don't think the Ukrainians ever have a plan to go to Muscovy, which, by the way, is the ancient name of Moscow. It used to be the Duchy of Muscovy, and then it evolved through time into being what we know as the Russian Empire, and then the Soviet Union, and now the Russian Federation. But I don't think they'll be going that direction. It's hundreds of miles, and while the Wagner unit made it look like it was a hop, skip, and a jump and did it in nearly a day, they were very lucky and really just threw everyone off guard when they did that. So I would say they're probably going for Crimea first, because they really don't want to waste lives on Russian ground that they won't keep after the war. They want to make sure that if Ukrainian blood is spilled, it's spilled liberating their own lands. So with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address, well, I thank you so much for sponsoring that live chat, Mark, and I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to JD Macco 23, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, JD Macco, for that support. He said, happy birthday to Shy404, user not found, and happy birthday. And also, if it actually is Shy's birthday, happy birthday to you. I did not know that. And also, thank you very much, JD Macco, for that support.
And thank you, JD Macco, for the support and sharing with us that it may be Shy404's birthday. And happy birthday to you if it is. And I'm sure they'll be like in the live chat, because it's like 9 times out of 10 people will be like, it's not! Don't say that! But if it is, happy birthday to you. I hope you're having a great birthday today, whether you're on stream or not. I haven't seen you in the live chat personally. But if you are here, happy birthday to you, and thank you, JD Macco, for the support and sharing that with us. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat is going to go to, let's see here, it's going to go to Steve T, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Steve, for your support as well. It says, Ukraine cannot expect support forever, but could transform as insurgent force, and with air cover, send modern hardware back in exchange for years of drones, javelins, small arms, IEDs, and defend like the Irish, Iraq, and others.
And I thank you for the support. And an interesting take, Steve. That's actually a very hot take right there. I'm not going to lie. And I would say, I think the Ukrainian, and I know this sounds wild, but I think the Ukrainians could rely on almost indefinite support, especially when we consider the costs of other wars. Afghanistan cost trillions of dollars, and I believe the invasion and subsequent occupation of Iraq for a few years cost the United States nearly 1.2 trillion US dollars. Both were incredibly expensive, cripplingly expensive, especially compared to what we spend on Ukraine at an annual basis at this point. And going off of the cost per year off of Iraq and Afghanistan versus Ukraine, I believe it's entirely possible that we could end up indefinitely supporting Ukraine. And not only that, the money isn't going to waste. The Ukrainians are defeating one of our largest rivals, and when I say largest rivals, you got to keep it in context. The largest rivals are pretty far down the pegs from where the U.S. is, but they're still on up there. We're knocking out one of our largest rivals at a discount price. We don't even have to fire a shot of our own. And the Ukrainians are doing it entirely themselves. They're doing an amazing job at it, and it's a huge benefit to us alone just for that reason, not factoring everything else in. And I think that we could support them. I think we could give them nearly everything as possible, but I do think that we should be a little bit more fiscally responsible going forward with it and lend-lease the stuff so that way we get most of it back by the end of the war if it still exists, or, if it's destroyed, maybe have them pay it back over payment installments over a period of time, kind of like the Soviet Union was supposed to and Britain did after World War II. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to talk about interesting hot takes like that really are worth discussing. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to Hal Rose, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you, Hal, very much for that support. He says, Enforcer, you think the SO failed on day 4. I say it failed on day 2 at the Battle of Hostomel.
And I thank you so much for the support. And I would have to say that that's actually a good measurement to say when it failed. But really, I would have to say I would still have to stick with day 4. And there's a good reason why. Now, the Battle of Hostomel was an abysmal failure, and the Ukrainians did retake the airfield by day 2, but they were pushed off of it by the morning hours of day 3. But by that point, the Ukrainians had already done their damage to the airfield and had stopped the VDV from being able to secure a landing zone for further Russian supplies to enter and further Russian forces to surround Kyiv with and take it over. But considering that the Russians overran the airfield just hours after the Ukrainians took it and started to encircle the western side of Kyiv, day 4 is really when I say the Ukrainians showed that this war wouldn't be over quickly, because that's when they stopped the Russians in the area in between Bucha and Irpin and blew up the bridge in between them. That was the moment that Russian forces literally just stopped. They didn't even move forward that day in that area. And considering that most of their armed forces were moving towards Kyiv at that time and they were able to stop them, that showed to me that war was already lost by the Russians on the 4th day, not the 2nd day, although that battle went terribly and was really a telltale sign of what day 4 would lead to, in my opinion. So I would agree with you. Definitely a benchmark moment of the early part of the war, but I still think day 4 was really the moment that I saw in my eyes the Ukrainians had a massive chance of winning this war. But with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And thank you so much for adding in your input, because that's a really interesting thing to say. And I'd have to say, I see where you're coming from on that. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and this one goes to Andrea Fed, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Andrea, for that support as well. She said, you guys are incredible, and even British intelligence is paying attention, and you are so appreciated, and it's incumbent on even little people like me on SS to do what we can to support you. And please take a question from the live chat.
And thank you so much for the support and saying such kind words. it means a lot to us. We do try our best. And while it seems like we're doing big efforts, we're just a small drop in the bucket. There are so many people out there who are involved in this, and a lot of them are doing an amazing job. But nevertheless, I got to thank you so much for the high praise of this channel and enjoying what we do. And I've also got to say, hopefully that's Social Security. I'm just kidding, by the way. I know that's Social Security, the SS. But still, thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running and throwing in such kind words as well. Because words like that really make us know that people do appreciate what we do. And we try our best every single day to make sure that we just power through. Of course, you know, plague was one thing, but beyond that, we always try and power through. And I thank you so much for enjoying that, appreciating that, and helping us to be able to make a living doing this and make this our job. And so with that, thank you so much once again. We are on to the next one.
And that live chat question goes to Wondering, who says, I was wondering, at what range does it become more luck than skill for sniper long shots?
The range, it really depends. Because for some, it may be luck to hit a long shot. For others, it may entirely be skill. And I've got to be honest, long shots really aren't about skill. It's, and I know that's about to be a hot take. Everyone's like, it's all about skill. Kind of, but it's more so about getting measurements right. Sniping at long distances is really a mathematical occurrence more so than it is an occurrence of just like pure luck and skill. You have to add in the Coriolis effect and a whole bunch of other things to be able to pull off really long shots like that, including humidity, windage. All of those things can affect the bullet drop and also the deviation that it takes from a straight line path to its target. So I would say that it's really mostly for some snipers that are trained in that realm, it's entirely skill. For others, it may be luck. And also, considering that some of them may not get the math just right, it may be luck to get really, really long shots, even if they do have the skill to be able to get down all of the mathematics that are required to be able to pull off long shots like that. But with that, I thank you so much for the support, and I hope that does address that well. Of course, I never went to sniper school, but that's my understanding of marksmanship and how it works. But thank you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to another channel legend. This time, it's a $30 donation from BC Skyman, who is an absolute old guard, and he put in a super sticker. And it's the YouTube creature looking at itself in the mirror, and I can't tell if it is just trying to, conjure up some self-confidence, or maybe it's a narcissist. I can't tell. But anyways, thank you very much, BC, for the support. And Enforcer, what say you?
Man, that thing's got issues. that thing needs to go see a psychiatrist.
It saw itself in the mirror and it got hearts in its eyes. That could be mental.
Man, that thing said, man, I love being me. It's like, I don't know about that. But still, thank you so much for the support, BC Skyman, and helping this channel to keep on running. Only you can throw in the pair and have us make comments on that pair. But I gotta thank you so much once again, because if it wasn't for folks like you, BC Skyman, who have been old guards for ages, we wouldn't have been able to make this channel possible. And by the way, I hope your hunting trip went well. And so with that, thank you once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Howard Buckaloo, who puts in the 10 and says, have a great night. And you have a great night too, Howard.
And you have an amazing night, Howard. I hope you get a lot of sleep. I hope the sleep's really refreshing, because sometimes you can get sleep that is horrendous. You feel worse after sleeping sometimes, and I hope the sleep is good. And so with that, you have a great night. And so, thank you once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Boulder Boy, who puts in a $10 donation. And he said, for paid day off, Thanksgiving.
Oh, damn, I got to thank you for that. I mean, payday off, we don't even have that. And I got to thank you so much for starting that today and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you so much once again. And by the way, Thanksgiving was amazing. Our mom did all the cooking, and it was incredible. There was turkey. We now have fried turkey, which we all know is the best turkey. Mashed potatoes, dressing, sweet potato casserole, green beans with bacon in them, and they were cooked in the bacon.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, Lord! There was, what else was there, Matthew? There was pork.
There was pork. There was dressing or stuffing. I think you already said that.
Gravy.
And gravy. Oh yes, gravy. Green beans and broccoli and stuff. So good.
It was all so good. It was amazing Thanksgiving, and also it was great to hang out with the family and appreciate everything that we can be thankful for, including y'all, the Lee Spring Army, which we did not run a stream that night, but we were still thankful for y'all nevertheless. And so with that, thank you so much once again for paying our day off. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Jason Carpenter, who puts in a 10 and says, for the Go to Hell Russia Fund, you're killing it, bro. You're killing it. And question from the chat, please.
And thank you so much for the support. And thank you for saying, we're killing it, Jerry, killing it. Because we thank you so much for enjoying it. We put in as much effort as we can, all things considered, to do this. And I've got to thank you so much for enjoying what we do and helping us to make this thing possible. And did they want a live chat, Matthew?
They did.
Get it, Matthew. Get it.
And the live chat question is going to go to Neil Vizinon, who says, what's the oldest Russian conscript that we have proof of?
I believe he was like in his 50s. Or at least on film. That's the one that's the one we have proof of. I can't really talk about like the oldest one recorded on paper, but I think the guy was like in his 50s from what we could tell, and he was conscripted. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much for sponsoring that live chat. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 donation from Sick Lid, who says, Frank's Red Hot Sauce is my favorite. And the slogan for him is, I put that shit on everything.
Man, that's it, man. They ain't lying with their advertising, man. But I gotta thank you for the support.
That's really their slogan, though? They really say that?
Wait, what's it called again? Frank's Red Hot?
Frank's Red Hot Sauce?
Frank's Red Hot Sauce. Let's see here. Let me find it. Images. Let's see here. They gotta have the motto on their stuff, right? Let's see. It says, the perfect blend of flavor and heat. Huh. They're really.
They say they put that on everything.
Let's see. Let me type in sauce motto or slogan. Oh, it really is. I put that on everything.
I love it.
They're straightforward with that. They're not kidding around with you. But honestly,
they called their own hot sauce shite.
Man, I put that on everything. It'd be adding that flavor. But I got to thank you so much for the support. And also, I have never had Frank's Red Hot, but I love Tabasco. It's a mix of spice. It's got a good tang to it. It's got a good linger. I think it's an amazing spice. And not only that, it supports a local business here in the southeastern United States because Tabasco has been owned by the McElhenney family for, I think, 8 to 9 generations at this point. And it's crazy to think that they started off in like 1868 making this sauce, and they're still doing it. And they're a very successful company over 100 years later. And I'd really respect that, especially the fact that their family stayed dedicated to that business. And not only that, they make a killer sauce on top of that. So I want to make sure to support their business because it supports local jobs down here in the Southeast, which, you know, is kind of like a side thing. It's really just a good sauce to me. But still, thank you once again. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Duncan VR, who puts in a $12 donation. And Duncan is back once again, and thank you very much for that support. Hey! And he has some animal noises. He says, Bamuba, for the Nitric Acid Coke Fund. Ba quack. We having late Thanksgiving. KFC tomorrow. Oh, nice. They said, for my American relative. Baba, woof, rough. Kermit is back. Gujalik Valakin, Baba.
And thank you so much.
Man, you're having KFC for Thanksgiving. That's something. I gotta say, I love my mother's cooking. Okay, first off, I gotta say that. But KFC is good too.
Matthew, I'm gonna blow your mind. Did you know it's tradition in Japan to have KFC on Christmas?
I'm sure KFC loves that.
Oh yeah, you wouldn't believe why. The vice president of KFC Japan said in like 1972 to the Japanese, he was like, oh yeah, everyone in America, they eat KFC on Thanksgiving. So everyone in Japan just started buying KFC on Christmas every year after he said that, because they thought Americans did it. And he said later on, he said in like an interview in like 2009, he was like, I felt kind of bad for lying to him, but like the company's like profit charts were like off the chart, so I couldn't feel that bad about it. And I was like, man, that guy was like a raw capitalist. He was like, man, they do it in America, knowing that he was just like flat out lying. But that's really cool to hear that y'all have KFC in Australia for Thanksgiving. Really cool. And also, I got to tell you this: KFC is good, but Mother's cooking is better. Nothing beats Mother's cooking. I think it was truly just mouth-wateringly good yesterday. It was amazing food. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, Duncan. I hope you have fun with that tomorrow, and thank you for supporting the Nitric Acid Coke Fund. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to AMX10 Speedy Bang Bang, who puts in a $10 donation and says, I think the proposed solution was to change strategy into defending the current geography, and I can't see that beginning until 2025, and also cutting the southern land bridge in 2024 changes everything.
And I thank you for the support, and if that's the context that they set it under as a long-term solution, like, say, 2025, I could see that. But trying to have them implement that now would not make any sense to me. And so thank you so much for adding in your take, because I would agree that makes sense at that point, but it wouldn't make that much sense right now, because they still have potential going into this next year. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and this one goes to Ari Sowini, who puts in a 10 and says, a small donation for the Enforcer for President Fund, Kiwi Wife and Finn, and have a great weekend.
And thank you so much, Ari Sweeney, Kiwi Wife, and Finn, for supporting this channel and helping us to keep this thing running. And thank you for wishing us a good weekend. It's going to be a great one. There's going to be a lot of studying. There's going to be a lot of goofing around. There's going to be a lot of stuff. Still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And Jack, Publix fried chicken.
Public
fried chicken. It's like a government service. But Publix fried chicken, it's good, but I feel like they sometimes oversalt the chicken, like more so the batter. It's so salty sometimes, it dehydrates you to eat the stuff. But beyond that, I think it's a very good chicken. Usually they make it very moist and tender, which is a very good quality in a fried chicken. But with that...
Enforcer, you're going to make a video on Public fried chicken. You remember the public cheese video or whatever
cheese.
That one was
it's
called?
Gonna be the government
cheese. Yes, we need a video on that. But
dude,
someone mentioned Publix deli subs too. Those are good. But what were you going to say, Enforcer?
Dude, everyone's asses would be going broke for some Public fried chicken. Everybody would be getting in line for that. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Ari Sowini yet again, who puts in a 10 and says, live chat question, please, from Kiwi Wife and Finn. And thank you very much, Kiwi Wife and Finn. We shall grab a live chat. This one is going to go to White Wolf. He says, do you think that with the latest Archer upgrade that has a 60-kilometer range would be a huge plus to Ukraine?
It could be. The Archer is a way better system, in my opinion, than the Iron Dome could be. It's more effective than the NASAMS, at least in terms of range. It's able to reach out about 4 times further. So I would say yes, the Arrow system could be used in Ukraine quite easily. It's just that we understand there isn't that many of them to give, and that may be the issue as to why they've never been given in the first place. But with that, I hope that does address that live chat. And thank you so much, Ari, Kiwi Wife, and Finn, for supporting the channel and helping us to answer that live chat question. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, we've got another one from Ari Sowini. This one is a $10 donation once again. And they said, are the paperless migrants Russia is transporting to Finnish borders genuine asylum seekers or Putler's little green men? And they're being let in at the last border point.
It's kind of a half and half. They're genuine asylum seekers, but they're weaponized genuine asylum seekers. It's very similar to what the Belarusians did with their migrants. Most of theirs are Syrian. They brought them into Belarus, telling them they would go on vacation there literally the flights were subsidized. They were free for Syrians. Anyone who wanted to go could go. So a lot of them hopped on planes, were flown into Belarus, and as soon as they got there, the Belarusians threw them onto buses, bussed them out to the Polish border, threw them off in the forest, and told them, the only way you're getting anywhere is to try and run across the Polish border. And they weaponized them. They're genuine asylum seekers that went to Belarus, but at the same time, the Belarusians made the intention very insincere. And that's the same thing that we're hearing about with Finland. that the Russians are doing. They're taking migrants, or more so asylum seekers, and they're trying to weaponize their genuine desire of wanting to try and escape a war to try and, it cause harm or damage to a surrounding country, and that country is Finland. So, it's a little tough when you consider that, but at the same time, it's best to just shut down the borders like the Finns are doing right now, instead of letting the Russians potentially cause harm to Finland through many different means, and I'd love to list them all off, but it would take a long time, by letting them in. So, I would say, I can understand Finland taking on these refugees, but the Russians have tried to weaponize their genuine nature of being a refugee. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you so much once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Sly Walker, who says, do you think this benefits the West, for example, testing the weapons?
Yeah, kind of, but not really, because a lot of the weapons we send to Ukraine are about 30 to 40 years old. And while they seem modern, in the modern mind, they aren't that modern. Most of the systems we're sending are very old and near to being dated, at least in the Western mindset, and, we're already replacing most of these systems. So usually we've already tested these to some extent in prior conflicts, but sending them to Ukraine, it's really just letting them have a second life that they weren't going to have here in America. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to Mark the Recidivistic Astronomer yet again. He puts in an 8, and he put this one in. He said, just to stop us going to bed. And man, I'm telling you, Mark's trying to turn this into the, Russian sleep experiment or something around here. I'm telling you.
They started smearing crap on the walls and their smiles.
I think that story was full of crap, too.
It was fake.
Literally.
Yeah. It was all fake. The whole thing was fake. But it was still a scary story when you're like 10 years old or 11 years old, hearing some guy go, and then I saw something that really scarred me. And it's like, oh my God, I'm so scared. But then you get older, and you're like, that story's full of crap. But still, thank you so much for the support, Mark, because that is going towards the No Sleep Fund. And also, we are starting to go overtime, too. So it's working. And so with that, thank you once again, and we are on to the next one.
And also, real quick, what do you put on your chicken fingers or tendies or whatever you want to call them? 39% said honey mustard, 33% said hot sauce, 19% said ranch, and 8% said zesty sauce, whatever the hell zesty sauce is. I couldn't come up with something, so I just put zesty sauce. And then I realized I forgot barbecue sauce. Honey mustard is the best, hands down. I think that's the winner, and I think not many people would disagree, even though some people said ranch and hot sauce. But unfortunately, what say you?
Man, I would have to be in that 35% that said hot sauce. You can't beat hot sauce on like wings or chicken fingers or really anything for that matter. Hot sauce goes great on everything, except for sweet things. Don't ever put, I don't know, man. That Mike's chili honey, man, that goes really good on some sweet stuff, man. It adds like a little
hot honey.
Yeah, man. Oh, that's good. That's some really good stuff. Expensive though. But still, I hope that does address that well, because I would largely say hot sauce. And so with that, thank you so much once again, everyone, for voting on that. 106 of y'all voted on that. That's a whopping number. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Angry Penguin, who puts in a 5, along with DB, who also put in a 5, and they said for yesterday, Happy Thanksgiving.
And thank you so much to both of you for the support, and thank you for wishing us a happy Thanksgiving. I hope y'all had an amazing Thanksgiving, and I thank y'all so much for supporting the channel and helping us to keep this thing running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to George Tincher, who puts in a 5 and says $5 Friday, he says.
A $5 Friday? Oh, wait a minute.
I thought he was about to do a $5 footlong song or something for a minute.
Man, watch out. It's Jared from Subway. What's he going to do? But anyways, I thank you so much for
Jared said, we want to run that footlong promotion year-round.
Man, the promotion's within 500 feet of a school. Jared, what are you going to do? But still, thank you so much for the support of this channel to keep on running. And thank you for throwing in a $5 super chat on what you are now deeming as $5 Friday. Because we don't, tell people to support the channel, I can endorse that. But if that becomes a thing, I'm not going to argue against it. We would be very appreciative of everyone's support and helping the channel to keep running. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Ari Sweeney, who puts in a 5 Australian. And thank you very much, Ari, once again. They said, I don't like seeing donation bar empty, so here's a little color.
And hey, thank you so much for the support, Ari Sweeney. And thank you for putting up a little bit of a light blue up there in that little top bar in the live chat. Of course, there are many different colors to super chats. There is, I think there's like the blue-green color, and then there's yellow, and then there's like a pinkish color, and then there's red, which are the Whopper super chats, the ones that honestly blow me away. And also all of them blow me away, but really the red ones do, because I'm like, damn, you know, it's like goodness, like I can't believe people find the channel to be that worthwhile. But we are entirely thankful to everyone who does find it worthwhile at all. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, big shout out to Toxic Bananas, who said, bada boom, Igor. And also, Vance Hicks put in a 5 and said, okay, I'm on board with a $5 Friday. Also, Butchie777 put in a £5 and said, £5 Friday, but it's now Saturday in the UK. And a huge shout out to Toxic Bananas, Vance Hicks, and Butchie777 for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank all of y'all so much for the support and throwing in $5 or £5 in Butchie777's case for $5 Friday. I got to thank y'all all so much for finding the channel worthwhile to support. It means a lot to us, and I want to make sure that I tread carefully with my statement here, because we greatly appreciate that y'all are supporting the channel, and we thank y'all so much for it. It means a lot. But at the same time, I don't want to be like, yes, $5 Friday, give us $5, because I don't like the idea of like telling y'all to like give us support. I always want that to be something that y'all never feel forced to do. But still, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that to the lot of you. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And also, Frank the Tank, he hopped in with a 5 and said, I support $5 Fridays and footlongs.
And I thank you so much, Frank the Tank, for supporting the $5 Friday and the footlongs. I gotta say, Subway's footlongs have kind of gone downhill. Last time I had them, they weren't that good. But you know what I will say was good? Public subs, unbelievably good, so underrated. It's so good. But with that, thank you so much once again. We are on to the next one.
All right, and we have a $5 super chat from Duncan VR. And thank you, Duncan, for pointing it out, because for some reason it did not transfer over, so I missed it. He says, Bah quack, where's Kermit these days? Guzlik Vlakin. To clarify, I'm having KFC Thanksgiving, the rest having turkey. With a baba, moo, and quack.
Oh, being a little out there, Duncan. I appreciate it, though. I like that. And also, Kermit is still here. I don't know if this is a good one, but I hope it is. And geschlick verleichman in the Deutschen Volk. But still, thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running, Duncan. Because if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have the traditional animal noises every single night. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and who we have next is CK Bold, who puts in a 5 and says, take a live chat question.
The usual.
The Whopper, the Big Mac, the number 1, the live chat question. And we shall grab one. And it goes to Barry Woodward, who says, has North Korea moved more active military to the DMZ, and what does that mean?
Yes, they have. It doesn't really mean much. It's really more so a revocation of their 2018 treaty that decreased the amount of forces at the border. So while it seems like it's an escalation, it's more so a return to the status quo before 2018. So it's not that serious to me, but, you know, if things start to escalate, then it will become serious. And so with that, thank you so much once again for sponsoring that live chat. I hope that does address that well. And thank you, CK Bold, for always throwing in support and always sponsoring a live chat. You help us to get through a lot of the live chats before we even get around to answering them just as a standalone. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Tom Exman, longtime channel viewer, and put in a 20. And big shout out to you, Tom, for that support. He says, $5 Footling Friday. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, boy.
He's German.
And
yeah.
Yeah. And thank you so much for the support, Tom Exman. And thank you for supporting the $5 Friday with $20. Is that 5? We'll count that as 5. I can't count. I can't do math well. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Indy Andy for C, who puts in a 5 and says, get a sandwich. And we shall get a sandwich.
I love sandwiches. I gotta tell you, man, I'm a sucker for sandwiches, man. And damn, there really are a lot of $5 super chats coming in. Good, Matthew, you're not getting off early tonight, man. That's it. We're not getting off tonight early. But still, thank you so much for the support, Indy Andy, and we will get a sandwich. Now, really quickly, while everyone may be in the spirit of $5 Friday, and now even in our time zone, it's officially Saturday now, we will have to speed up our answers a little bit to the $5 Friday Super Chatters, because we have to make sure to get some sleep, because I'm getting up very early in the morning tomorrow to actually take some of my very near friends, very good friends, to take them to learn how to shoot rifles. So I've got to make sure.
Right, 2 days before a final exam in law school, the first ever. He's going to go have some fun. He's crazy.
Man, I'm crazy, man. I'm losing it over here. But I want to make sure to be up and at it early in the morning, so that way I could be attentive and make sure to get across the most important things and make sure that everyone's safe. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one is going to go to Frank the Tank yet again. This time he puts in a 20. And huge shout out to you, Frank. Thank you very much for that support. And he says, add to the Stay Up Late and Student Stress Fund. And man, that fund is overflowing, I'm telling you.
Thank you so much for support, Frank the Tank. And thank you for supporting very unhealthy habits. And with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And y'all, you know what? I'll share with y'all something. Yeah, you know what? I am going to share this with y'all. I was second guessing myself there. I'm going to share this with y'all because I did this just for y'all. We're going to do gun reviews once the final exams are over. We are very adamant on that. That's something that will happen, regardless of the quality. We're just going to start putting them out. And I did something today that I thought y'all would really like to know. And I'll pull it up. So, some of y'all know about the Nagant revolver, the M1895 Nagant revolver used by the Russian Empire and later on the Soviet Union. What some of y'all may or may not know is that the Nagant revolver is one of the only revolvers, and I think it may be the only revolver that can be suppressed in the world, and that is actually pretty wild. Now, can't really find any good pictures of it with its silencer attached, but here's one from a video game, and it's the one up here at the top. That's what the silencer looks like. These were used by Soviet scouts during World War II. They were also used by more higher-up forces, usually recon, and also snipers as well. And they also had a very interesting habit of being heavily used by forces like the NKVD, which, as many of y'all know, were the political folks who executed dissidents who didn't really like the Soviet government and did other kinds of clandestine things. I may have been able to get one of these so that way we can review it. It's going to take some time, of course, to get the suppressor through, but it's going to happen, and we're going to make a gun review video on the only revolver I know of in the world that can actually be effectively suppressed, which is pretty wild. But with that, hope that does address that well. I hope y'all like to hear that, and hopefully that y'all be looking forward to the neat guns that we'll be able to review. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Dark Warrior 137, who puts in a 5 and says, I don't understand why the U.S. is complaining about cost when Ukraine is defeating the very enemy we spent so much to defend against as a fraction budget.
And I would agree. People kind of lose context to how much things cost, and so many people come in and say things about how expensive A, B, or C is, and they have no context on what the government really spends on a yearly basis, or through passing bills and things like that through Congress. And that's one thing I'd have to completely agree with you with. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Sick Lid, who puts in a 5 and says, hard times make strong men make easy times make weak men, and weak men make hard times. And straight up facts.
Man, he's spitting facts. Look at the Sigmas you've become. But still, thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for supporting us as well. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, you know what we're about to say, the channel wouldn't be able to run. And I'm not even kidding. And so with that, thank you once again. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Guamson Cruz, who puts in the 5 and says, I respectfully disagree. Economics is fine, but at the end of the day, the guy with a gun does not pay heed to he without one, only they who have theirs.
And I thank you so much for the words of wisdom. Honestly, those words are so wise, I can't even really comprehend them. But nevertheless, I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here right now. And also, Matthew, August, I think it is. How do you say that name, Matthew? It's the one that starts with A-U-G-T.
A-U-G-T. Where's that?
It's in the top chat, a little ways up.
Let's see.
You know what? We won't worry.
Yeah, I
about
don't see it.
I'll just say AUG-T. AUG-T said, exacting tolerance and low clearance between the rear barrel and face of cylinder ? About the M1895. No, it's even cooler. It's an even neater feature of this very bare bones revolver, and it's so cool because nobody knows about it until you get one and you look at it. When the hammer is pulled back on the Nagant, and I showed this to Matthew today, and Matthew can attest, it's really cool. The revolver actually pushes the cylinder forward to where it makes a seal with the barrel and encloses all of the gas from the bullet firing inside of the barrel. None of it escapes out of the sides of the cylinder in between it and the barrel because the perfect seal is made. It's one of the few revolvers that does that in the world. I think it is actually the only one that does it in the world, and that's why it's really the only revolver that can have a suppressor put on it. So really cool thing about it. It's a really neat fact. But beyond that, I have to be honest with you, it's not the greatest revolver out there. It's really minimal. But when we do a review on it, I will talk about that in great depth. But with that, thank you so much once again for asking a question that I could rabbit hole on, although it's way too late and we can't really rabbit hole anymore. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Ari Soini, who puts in a 5 and says, $5 Friday, Sea of Green.
And thank you so much for the support, Ari. We appreciate the Sea of Green because y'all help us to make this possible as a job. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And next up, we have a $10 super chat from M. Vitali, who says, do you think the situations in Finland or Poland are going to escalate more than militarization or borders, and Poland seems more likely to see violence? Slava Ukraine, Slava Europe, and long live Zelensky.
And thank you so much for the support, and a good question. I don't think it's going to escalate too far because many of the Western nations and a lot of the Western mindset is towards making sure that this doesn't go out of hand. So while it's going to get very close to it, and it has in the past, I don't think we're actually going to see it evolve into being a full-on war in between Poland or Finland and the Russian bloc. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and thank you once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, huge shout out to Ed B, who put in a 5, along with Ari Soini once again, who put in a 5, and Junebug72, who also did so as well. And they said, $5 Friday in effect.
Yay! And thank you all so much. Thank you to the three of you so much for $5 Friday and helping this channel to keep on running. Well, I do not encourage $5 Friday in any way, shape, or form, but nevertheless, I thank y'all so much for pretty much making that a thing amongst a lot of you and helping this channel to keep on running through that. And so with that, thank you so much once again to the three of you. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Zero J Kwan, who puts in a 5 and says, here you go, Enforcer and Enforcer Matt, and have one on me. And keep up the good work. And do you guys still chat with Operator Starsky?
We haven't really been able to talk to him much, mostly because he doesn't really have a tendency of responding over Twitter, because my Telegram ended up getting overrun with like bots somehow. So I ended up deleting the first one and then getting a second one, and then I ended up deleting that one as well. And then I never got it again. So, you know, I just never, talked to anyone I had on Telegram before after that. But we haven't really been able to talk to Starsky much because he doesn't really respond to much on Twitter, although we have tried to reach out to him before. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and thank you so much for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Wellness LSA, who puts in a 5 and says, €5 Fridays, join in.
And thank you so much for the support. And it looks like it's not just $5 Fridays, £5 Friday and €5 Friday. We're becoming fat both by the pounds and the euros. And I got to tell y'all, euros with lamb, really good. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Neil Vizanot, who puts in the 5 and says, $5 Friday, don't like it, too bad. You ain't president yet.
In prison?
You ain't president yet.
Oh, no. I thought you said
you also aren't in prison either.
I was like, am I missing something? Like, am I supposed to be? But still, thank you so much for the support, Neil. And not president yet. Give it another 17 years, and I should be able to try. But still, thank you so much for the support, and thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on to our live chat questions. Once again, thank you all very much for the support tonight. And our first live chat is actually going to be the Morse code decoders of the stream. Tonight, it was Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Paul Schultz, Kevin J., Rumpelstiltskin, and Toxic Bananas. They said, "Good evening, gents. This evening's Morse code says, Russian forces got a little cold, and it made them lose it. Long live the LSA."
That's the sound of money. And I've got to thank you so much for getting that Morse code message correct to the lot of you. Of course, it's amazing to think y'all have done that for so long, and y'all got that message dead on the nail. And so with that, thank you so much once again to the lot of you. And with that, we're going to get Ari Sawini's super chat, which will be the last one of the night, and then we're going to address the second to last live question of the night.
And this one goes to Ari Sawini, who puts in a 5 and says, "Well, here's a 5. Make it a Bitcoin."
And we will. Boy, those folks who are Bitcoin millionaires, I have a feeling they're feeling really good right now. But still, thank you so much once again. And thank you, Jacob Wasaki, I believe it is, for the support. The first time you support the channel, too. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Robert Massey III, who says, "I really hope that the U.S. stops being so conservative with the support to Ukraine and give them what they need to succeed. And why do you think they're so reluctant to do so?"
Oh, you know,
Excuse me.
It's just, it's really just for show. I'm not going to lie. It's all for show, because if the roles were reversed, you would see that the one who's opposing support to Ukraine right now would be supporting it, and the other one would be condemning it. It's just a matter of having, opposition just for the sake of it. That's really the whole thing, and it's not even a majority of them. It's actually a minority of the Congress that's kind of holding the thing up. But that's really the reason why. Hopefully, everyone can understand that this is a strategic interest and a concern for the United States long term in Europe, and we can see that we end up supporting the Ukrainians as much or even more as we had at our peak. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And I think we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Mark Hooper, who says, "There were some Russians fighting in Russia a few months back. Is that still happening? And occasional raids, or is it completely stopped? And love the stream."
And thank you so much for loving our stream. And to answer your question, Russians fighting in Russia, if you're talking about the Ingush people of Ingushetia, from what we understand, they may still be fighting, although we don't get a lot of information or news on that. It seems as though their forces are very small, although it is technically an armed uprising. It doesn't really appear they're having a large effect. So if you're talking about them, if you're talking about the people out in Siberia, that actually ended up being about illegal jade mining, which is, I didn't even know that people illegally mined for jade out there, but that ended up being about that. But of course, that almost turned into an armed uprising as well. For that reason, we feel like that one ended up being suppressed from what we know. And then the partisans are still out there doing their thing. We just don't show it a lot on stream because, it's really just them setting fire to a whole bunch of railroad signal boxes, which does have a big effect, but, you can only see that so many times before people get desensitized to it. So depending on which armed uprising you're talking about or armed resistance there is to the Russian government, some of them are still going on from what we know, and some of them have been quashed. And so with that, I hope that does address that very well. And with that, it is the end of tonight's stream. And what a stream it's been. An incredibly long one. The news lasted 2 straight hours. And not only that, the question segment lasted for another hour and 20 minutes. I've got to thank all of y'all so much once again for appreciating the stream and enjoying it so much. It means a great deal to us that so many of y'all came here tonight to watch this news, and we hope that you share this news and our channel with your friends and your family over this Thanksgiving, and if hopefully while they're still there, and let them know about it if they're interested in topics like this war. Maybe y'all can make it a family event to watch this thing all together. Maybe y'all can talk about that over Thanksgiving dinner next year, if this is still going on. Of course, make sure to subscribe, like, and comment. And by the way, when I say comment, it doesn't mean in the live chat, because for some reason, YouTube doesn't count that when it considers analytical things. You have to actually, like, comment in the comments section, which is weird. I know that doesn't make any sense, but for some reason that's how YouTube works. But if you do want to help out the channel, make sure to type a little comment down there. You know, just say whatever you want. Throw in your input on the stream. Give a take on something we talked about on the stream. Talk to others. You know, whatever you want. But, you know, leaving a comment does help. And also hitting the like. We've gotten nearly 2,200 likes tonight, which is absolutely incredible. And I hope that everyone continues to hit the like button and help us to spread the word of what we do here on this channel. And so with that, good night. Good luck. Stay safe. Take care. Slava Ukraini. God bless Israel. God bless the United States. And long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And good night, folks. We'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you all for another great stream once again. And Slava Ukraine, Slava Israel, and see you tomorrow.
And thank you, Bill, for the 2. No bed yet. Now we are. Good night. And LSA!